Good evening, Warband. Welcome to this April 1st Red Pill Cult meeting. No, it's not a joke. We're really doing it. This is one of the few things you can believe on the internet today. So we have AC, Dr. Dre, Matria, Psy, Mortician Stone, and Euro GA Nationalist, Euroga Nationalists. Well, welcome. Love Thy Lord 98, welcome. So, some of the chat. So, is Think Before You Sleep Canadian? I don't believe so. Sounds like you used to live in Canada. Well, I don't think that's come up. Maybe he did. I mean, we've got enough embarrassments coming out of Canada that we don't really need to add him to the list. I think that he's a U.S. problem, but I just really hope not. Euroga Nationalist, okay? Well, I live in Canada. Yes, I am. I'm the token Canadian of the warband. The 2nd of April out there, Machi? Jeez. All right, well. So, we are getting into archived episode 24. For those of you who have not been to the Red Pill Cult meetings before, Sean of Think Before You Sleep watched some criticism a while back saying that people didn't do deep enough research on him. You know, his hours upon hours of video content over the past several years. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe we actually do need to have a deeper look into the past of Sean. Specifically, his deleted past, the stuff that he wants to hide and bury. And thanks to the Big Town Mirror Project and successful endeavors, much of this has been archived. So, we're going to start going through, though not at regular speed. I have learned the hard way that going through this at regular playback speed is a nightmare. So we are going to set our playback to 1.3 times speed to try to get through this in a reasonable amount of time. So, one final thing before we get too into this. If you want to support the content, super chats are available. Though personally, I would much prefer you use this donation link. It will go through Streamlabs itself. That way YouTube doesn't take their 50% pound of flesh. So it is pinned at the top. Start at 1.3, crank it up to 1.5. That's the thing. At 1.5, it becomes almost incomprehensible. We'll see if we can get through at 1.3. I've just found 1.5 to be way too fast, because we do need to still actually hear what he says. But, without further ado, let's jump into archived episode number 24. They Can't Lie Anymore. Let's begin.
Over the past 5 years or so. And I think this is just the end results of a bunch of changes that have been made over the past 30 years or so. And kind of like this, change.
Oh, Dr. G, does Gray have a cold? Yes. Yes, I do. I've had it for the past week. It's very annoying.
It happens very, very slowly, and then it happens very quickly. Like imagine this. You're trying to roll a giant boulder up a hill to get to the other side of the hill. The first part of the hill is uphill. So of course you're going to have to slowly push that boulder up the hill. But as soon as you get all the way to the top and you're trying to get to the other side, you just let the thing roll down. And we're in that phase where we're just letting things roll down. In the 90s, when we first got the internet, the communication was starting to build. Because that's what we really need. We needed communication that was competitive with the expensive mainstream media, whether it's like, back in the 1800s, you couldn't afford to make a newspaper if you were just a small business person, or if you were just not small business, if you were just an average person. And of course, there's no way in hell you could afford a TV channel as an average person in the 70s, or even in the 90s, because all that equipment was expensive. Like a camera that would shoot film was like $30,000. Audio equipment could cost $5,000. Now I can spend $100 on a mic, and I can spend at most, I could just use my cell phone, but at most maybe $500 to $1,000 on a really, really decent camera. And now I can set up a background, and now I can be competitive with mainstream media.
And yet at this point, well, you don't even need the camera. All you need is some basic editing software. Personally, I use DaVinci Resolve. It is free. My microphone setup's kind of expensive, but it's still well within the three-figure range. And, Sean, at this point, you are not using even a cell phone camera. So, clearly, to broadcast your ideas, you don't need that. And, well, let's be honest, that's really only for if you require some decent audio. Blogs have been around for quite some time. How much reach do they get? I don't know, some people have written books on them. So, with self-publishing being a thing, the budget is basically, can you afford... I guess you really just need a phone that you could type blog posts onto, or Twitter. Like, let's be honest, any idiot with a smartphone, which is a couple $100 at most, they've got audio, they've got video, and they have access to social media. So if your ideas are that contagious, you can jump onto any social media platform and spread your ideas far and wide until the censors get you. So, yeah, Dr. Dre generation was the last ones to grow up without internet. It's like, I'm millennial generation, so we started off without internet, and then we got internet, and probably biased here, but I think that was for the best, because not having internet or smartphones until teenage years. The millennials are far from functional, or at the very least amazing. But I'd say that in a lot of ways we're far more tech savvy and tech cautious. Like Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're the ones who, as kids, were making profiles on Facebook, putting their real names and whatnot out there. I think the millennials were the last generation that was told, hey, maybe don't air all your dirty laundry on the internet. And then a bunch of us did anyway. And we're still trying to live down that reputation. But that's neither here nor there. Let's keep going. He hasn't said anything incorrect yet.
And so because of that, we're a little bit more mobile. We're a little bit more democratized. And when you... Well, certainly...
Democracy, where absolutely any idiot, regardless of their qualifications, think that they can speak with the authority of someone with years of experience and logical reasoning. Some of the lefties seeping through where, well, I don't know. I guess, do you think that democracy is necessarily a good thing? Because, funnily enough, as we've gotten more democratized, people seem to be hating each other more and more divided, and we're worse off by and large. Because again, I think the millennials were the last ones who, growing up, were given the taboos of like religion, politics, and sexuality. Like those were just things you did not bring up in polite company. And nowadays they seem to be the primary method of discussion, right? They're people's entire identities. Oh, we'll just chew on that while we keep going.
when you monopolize a situation, when you monopolize media, you get lower quality and more expense, or you get a certain narrative that is only one cause, and you don't get the second side of the story, because there are always two sides of every story. I mean, look at that, the MAGA hat kids that happened this last weekend, and I think the mainstream media has largely not figured out that they can't lie anymore. And
So I believe what they're talking about specifically is the Nick Sandman incident, where the media filmed it, framed it, and then published it in a way that made Nick Sandman and like his class look like a bunch of racists, when really it was a whole bunch of offensive stuff from a bunch of unfilmed bystanders and this one native dude who just got all up in their face. And he did end up suing CNN and winning, if I recall correctly. So, we'll see where he's going with this.
at this point, lying is to their detriment, because once they get found out, a big backlash has happened. And certainly, we've had two major things in the past 2 weeks. We've had the Gillette thing, and we've had the MAGA thing, and both of them have had extremely massive backlash against liars. Like with the Gillette thing, it was like this chick director who was accusing people of all men of rape, and it turns out when we look into her history, she's been accused of sexual assault by children. I think like 7 times or something like that. So have fun lying about that shit. And we have the MAGA hat kids who had a carefully edited.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing, because now, again, I didn't grow up in this era, so maybe some of my more seasoned viewers could elaborate. But didn't it used to be that way back in the day when journalists supposedly had integrity, this was the job of the journalist? That when someone with authority started to abuse it, they would go do some research, dig up a bunch of verifiable dirt on them, and then expose that in the local newspapers, and then that was the backlash? Instead, nowadays, you have people on the internet digging through someone's archived histories in order to like find out, hey, how's this person been a hypocrite? So, now maybe it's got. I imagine that turnaround time's gotten a lot faster, but at the same time, people's attention spans have gotten smaller. What used to be news for 2 weeks is now news for a weekend. A such a picture of fourth estate and its definition. Yeah. So, yeah, like it was a thing. Like I didn't grow up in the era where that stuff necessarily happened, but you got the idea from the fictional stories that that's kind of what it was supposed to be. Like you had independent journalists digging around to find the real truth, not the truth that they wanted you to think, but the real truth that was all hidden, the actual news stories. Like those journalists don't exist anymore. I mean, or at the very least, I guess the closest would be Project Veritas, and his name's escaped me, like Andy No. I apologize, I don't recall that off the top of my head. Yeah, whimsical and nostalgic. Now, yes, yes, it is. I mean, you watch some shows or cartoons from out of the 80s and 90s, or even early 2000s, and it's like, what world were these people living in where they thought this was believable? It's like, oh yeah, it's the past of 20 to 40 years ago. Strange times.
Clip to make them look like a bunch of jackasses, and it turns out when you watch the full video, it was the Indian guy who was the asshole. Plus, there were I watched a good maybe 30 minutes of that whole kind of like an hour and 40-minute clip or video. Clip would probably not be the right word. So an hour and 40-minute video or so of these black racists shouting shitloads of racial slurs against white people. Peckerwood, cracker, redneck, white trash. All these things. By the way, I can say all those things with no fear of being censored on YouTube, with no fear of being called a racist. But if I even just say the N-word on YouTube, I can't even say that I can't even say the actual word, describing it educationally, without being called a racist, without being called all these terrible things, without being censored by YouTube. Crazy how that works. So these black people were shouting shitloads of racial slurs against everybody, most particularly white people, though they were pretty non-exclusive there. And then this Indian guy comes around to break things up, and then he just starts beating a drum in front of these kids' faces, and then all they do is kind of laugh nervously. And the media spins it as like these kids are so terrible, they're disrespecting the native tribes. Turns out this guy's a real piece of shit anyway. Turns out he's been at multiple events, making up stories about how it went this way. Like he said with this one, the reason he started beating the drum in their faces, they were shouting, "Build the wall." Turns out nobody has any evidence of them saying that. And so this guy's lied at multiple events like that, and he was just repeating the same behavior. So I think the best part about this is that they don't have the power to do that anymore. They don't have the power to lie about guns. They don't have the power to lie about rape. They don't have the power to lie about racism and stuff like that, because at this point people are fed up with it.
Really? They don't have the power to lie. I think that anybody who has been called a conspiracy theorist in the past couple of years would say, yes, they absolutely have the power to lie. Because, sure, maybe you can pretty easily find out the truth. But most people don't care. Most people don't care about the truth. They care more about social acceptance by their peers. And the mainstream narrative, regardless of how factual it is what matters more than the truth. Guys, chat, let's be honest here. How many people can you honestly and sincerely tell the truth around that you know, versus how many people do you have to, at the very least, keep quiet or just kind of nod your head? Even if you don't spread the lie, at the very least, you don't acknowledge it, don't dive into it, don't make a big deal of knowing that you know the truth. Even if you're getting to say, "I told you so" 6 months down the line. Yeah, Vitla's like, yeah, not many. Self-censorship is real. So these people, this mainstream media, they absolutely can lie, and they do lie. And their lies spread far and wide and are repeated by so many people. Because here's the thing, like, maybe at this point they hadn't come up with conspiracy theorist. They hadn't grabbed all the fact checkers, and they hadn't made everyone else bend the knee for fear of censorship. Like, if there's this point, which I guess is like early to mid 2019, I'm keeping a very rough timeline of when this is, but I'd have to double check the archives. But this is like early to mid 2019. If there was a point where they couldn't lie because of Gillette, which, heck, it's been ages. I didn't even know that stuff about the Gillette person. I only knew this Nick Sandman stuff because I watched a couple other channels, and then he went on to successfully, sue CNN and whatnot. But what were the actual consequences? CNN's viewership is at an all-time low. Have people stopped watching CNN in large numbers? Yeah, but they still go. They still publish. We've seen the tech industries, like the recent ones, they've collapsed, but that's because their money dried up. CNN hasn't gone anywhere. What's the Gillette thing? Apparently some spokeswoman for Gillette made some broad accusation about men and their aggressive sexual advances, and then it turns out that she's a Hollywood sexual herself. So, yeah, apparently that was a thing back in 2019. But what's the consequence? Like, has Gillette suffered overly much? Let me go check their stock. That's usually a decent marker of how they've been doing. Let's see. Let's look back 5 years on Gillette. Let's see. So Yeah, they took a major nosedive between October of 2019 and March of 2020, and they've been largely stable except for a recent fall off. So, did they suffer? No. Well, yeah, they suffered, but like they're not gone or anything. Wait, this is Gillette, India, so they're in Gillette, America. I don't know, that would be a little more in depth research. They feel like doing during a segment. So, the Frost White Navatar, hit me up on Discord. I can probably throw something for you. Yeah, what? Yeah, Sons of Patriarch. Gillette is one company in Procter and Gamble's portfolio. Don't give my money intentionally, but I'm guilty of slipping a time or two buying some household cleaner. Well, exactly. That's the other thing. It's Gillette is just one arm of a much larger company, and when you look, like it's not something that you can just be like, oh, I'll just get this competitor's brand. You can do that for some stuff, but and you got to wonder, like, they're all kind of in this together at the top. You can try to make them pay through various means, but then how much of that is additional money coming out of your pocket? Because it's not like there's, I don't know, your local dish detergent. Uh, Heck, for me, it's been easy to not buy Gillette products. I just stopped buying razors in general. So, yeah, media doesn't really have the same impact anymore, especially after every age group got internet access. It, that's true. They not having widespread media understanding until later in life, like for me, the news wasn't really much of a thing for much of my life. It's weird to see the older generations like listening to the radio for all their news or watching television at regular hours for their news. Because when you catch it every now and again, you think, why does this matter? It's not like these people are going to do anything with that information. Maybe there's one story a week that's actually relevant, but by and large, the information isn't useful or can't be acted on. In the 90s, it was like a second god to some. It's still a second god to some now. That's the freaky thing. Like, they parrot stuff that they hear on the television. They talk about it to their friends. And then they're like, oh, hey, I verified it with one other person in person. Therefore, it must be true. And you can't tell them otherwise. So, I mean, the biggest one was during the beer bug time when I tried telling one of my coworkers repeatedly, like every time this stuff would come on the news, and eventually he just went, "Oh my God, who cares?" And quite frankly, that was the point where I stopped caring. When you can tell these people the truth, a truth that they can act on, they absolutely could act on it, and probably would make a difference in their health with and the health of their children, and they don't care. Like, okay, okay. Ever hear that yeah, you're having heart problems? My response is going to be verbatim. Oh my God, who cares? Because I tried caring and now I don't anymore. But gotten kind of off topic. Let's just keep going to try to blast through this in under an hour.
People were a little bit disturbed by it back in 2014 with all the major feminist and rape allegation stuff or the triggered stuff. Or the Triggly Pup, I think Triggly Pup was 2016. Like 2014 and 2016 were the big feminist years, 2016 being the biggest feminist year. That's when the Anita Sarkeesian stuff came out. That's when the Lacey Green stuff came out. That's when the big red stuff.
Oh, Dragon Repeater, how do you make people care? They need to hurt. People care when they suffer. And unless you're going to do it to somebody, which is illegal in most cases, you just have to be patient until the consequences make them suffer so much that they end up caring. I, there's plenty of people who are they're so fat it affects their health, and they're not going to care enough to make any sort of changes until the heart attack. Doesn't matter that they can't breathe properly. Doesn't matter that they can't do any sort of physical exercise without gasping and moaning. No, it's only when like their heart stops and the Grim Reaper taps them on the shoulder for a second that they're going to care enough to do something about it. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of these people aren't going to care about injections that they got from over the past couple of years until they're standing over the graves of some of their children. But because it doesn't really matter how many celebrities or news anchors die, they're not going to believe it. And at this point, they've had so many injections and boosters that it doesn't matter. But let's keep going.
Came out, or the Trigglypuff stuff came out. People just kind of stopped putting up with this shit because we're tired of it. We're tired of people like Anita Sarkeesian saying that every video game contains rape of women and there are no positive female roles. And well, why don't you actually prove you played games first? And we'll see about that, because there are shitloads of positive female role models in games, and it's always been that way.
Doesn't matter how much we call out Anita Sarkeesian for lying. She still gets hired as a consultant. Like, so what if we call them out? Like, so what if they get exposed? If a AAA game industry is still willing to hire on some of these feminists like Anita Sarkeesian or Zoe Quinn who have dirty, dirty pasts, they're willing to hire them on and pay them a bunch of money to work as consultants, even if it ends up costing the company even more money in the long run. What does it matter? What does it matter how much they are mocked, openly despised, reviled, and called out for their hypocrisy? Because they still end up winning. They still end up getting the money. They still end up getting the power and the clout. So I wouldn't exactly go patting ourselves on the back here for being able to see the truth and expose these people and call out their bullshit, because the people who actually have the power don't seem to care. Am I wrong? Let's keep going.
See any sort of Final Fantasy game ever, they always have female characters in Final Fantasy games, and a lot of them are leads. In fact, the best, probably by popularity, if you argue with people will probably say Final Fantasy VII is the best Final Fantasy, but certainly if Final Fantasy VII is the best, 6 is a very, very close second, if not better than 7. And 6, the main protagonist, the most powerful character in the game, is a female character named Terra.
Much as I hate to agree with Sean on stuff, yes, I'm going to agree that 6 is superior to 7. So, guess that's one thing we can agree on.
Or I guess Tina, if you're playing the Japanese version. And so we're tired of it. We're tired of being called racist. We're tired of being called rapist and sexist. We're tired of the mass immigration from the third world. Immigration is fine as long as you're getting immigrants who are being productive, but we're getting a lot of crappy. We're not getting the nation's best. I think Trump said that, because that's certainly perfectly true. I've dealt with plenty of immigrants and immigrants who have zero interest.
For the avatar, devilish face, devilish face, devilish face, devilish face, devilish face.
Thank you, Frost. Yeah, I'll get talking with you on that after the stream. But
in learning any sort of American values and even just learning the language, like how much harder it is to communicate with someone who doesn't even speak English, like especially if you're trying to teach a class. Like certainly, I guess public schools, fuck public schools. Private schools probably won't matter because these people couldn't afford private school. But as someone who teaches publicly and then has to deal with people who don't speak English and people who have been living in this country for 20 years and still do not speak any English, and then having to manage those people who answer. In fact, one of the places I work at, they have a jacuzzi, but a lot of the immigrants don't want to bring towels. They don't want to bring their own towels because it costs money. So what they'll do is they will use paper towels to dry themselves off. And they do it so much that at this particular place, they've had to spend, they're like hundreds of dollars over budget because they had to keep replacing paper towels and paper towel dispensers because all the third worlders don't want to buy their own towels. And there's something insulting about saying that you're going to live in this country for years, for decades, and not even learn the language. It's like, well, it's like, fuck this culture. It's like you're saying fuck you to the culture that's supporting you, because certainly your culture didn't do it, so otherwise you wouldn't have moved here. And so we're tired of all that shit. We're tired of them lying about stuff like that. We're tired of them lying about guns. And certainly, I think I've found out the real purpose of why they're trying to get rid of guns is because, well, it's like in Europe. In Europe, you have these massive Muslim convents or convoys, maybe both those terms are correct, where you have the like 8% Muslim population or whatever controlling the entire country. And the reason they can do that is because the people are disarmed. They don't have any weapons to fight back. And so that's exactly what they're trying to do, at least in California. In America, is they want to take away weapons, and then they have.
This is one heck of a tangent. I just been kind of trying to wait for him to get to a point, but this is very much. Jeez, I mean, it's one thing to go into a tangent during a live stream review, but this is one heck of a tangent. Like, what's this with the can't lie to me? I mean, is he saying anything that is necessarily wrong? Well, I'm not U.S., so far as I know, what he's saying is accurate. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so they're laying out false narratives about immigration and about staying strapped. Okay. And so what? We can call it out because they can't lie anymore? Have things changed? It's been at least 3 years since you put this video out, Sean. What's changed? Has anything changed? Have things gotten better in any way? Has being able to call out all these narratives changed a bloody thing? No more immigrants are flooding across the southern border than ever before, because this is during the Trump administration. Now it's the Biden administration. Hey, it doesn't matter. That's the thing that really sucks. It doesn't matter whether or not we can call out all this stuff if we, at the end of the day, can't do anything about it. If our knowledge of it doesn't matter to the people at the top, then they have no reason to stop doing it. It's like if you're a comedian in a crowd, if you have 5 hecklers for every 100 people cheering you on, do you really care about the hecklers? Well, we'll keep going. At the very least, it makes these faster to get through because he just kind of keeps going on without a solid point to latch on to.
These massive amounts of immigrants come out who are violent, who are criminals, and it's like not 100% of them are. But if you have a society that has maybe 5% criminality, which I think is the average rate for Americans, and then you take a society that has 20% criminality, even though not all of them are criminals, you've just multiplied the amount of crime by 4 times. And so, of course, they want to take away your guns, because if they take away your guns and they increase crime by having massive influxes of immigration, well, then you will ask the government for any sort of solution. You'll take what you can get. Or, in this case, what's been happening everywhere, fortunately, because they don't have control over the media now. If they had the 1990s control.
They don't have control over the media now? I'd say they have less control over the media now. Maybe. But I wouldn't say that they don't have control over the media now. And even in the 90s, I wasn't really around, and I know Sean wasn't. We're close. Like, I'm basically the same age as Sean, but didn't really grow up more in the cities, so maybe I've got a very different childhood than him so far as that goes. But you had more people able to speak more radical thoughts on smaller radios, sure, not worldwide reach, but somewhat local reach. You had like rebel disc jockeys, and I think I've heard some Howard Stern stuff lately just through the radio. Some of my coworkers, I'll be honest, that stuff just feels like brain cancer. So I don't know what it was like back in the day, but listening to it now, it's brain cancer. But he was considered radical back then, and Tom Likas too. Like, that stuff got out. Maybe it didn't get too far beyond the broadcast range of whatever the radio station was. But at the same time, if you had a more localized radio, then you could just cultivate your audience without it becoming a worldwide concern. So, I don't know. Let's just keep going. Maybe he's got something else to latch on to.
Control media. If it didn't have the internet, we'd be done. This would be it. They would have won. We would have mass influx of immigration. They would have taken over our population. We would be basically slaves, or this place would be like South Africa is right now, where whites are being killed just for being white, or they're having their property stolen just for being white.
You sure that's not happening right now? Are you sure that's not happening right now? As bad as South Africa? Perhaps not. But and maybe it wasn't as bad in 2019, but can you say in 2023 that there are no white people being killed over their skin color? Really? As for property being taken away, well, perhaps not directly. But that doesn't mean that it isn't being done indirectly. Let's keep going.
And things like that. So let me take the second part of this episode and talk a little bit about something I've been talking about in my classes this week, because I'm very interested in what makes people dogmatic.
Talking about in your classes, are you not a yoga instructor? Okay, guys, I have never been to yoga instruction. I think the only kind similar experience I've had would be karate instruction. I do not remember any of my karate instructors ever trying to give me some sort of lecture on politics or society. I am there to learn how to do karate, not to hear your personal political opinions. But whatever. Let's see what he gets into here.
Or especially how to avoid dogmatism, or how to tell if someone is a liar. Because that's basically what this problem is that people are lying and people are believing the lies. And people will believe anything if they're stupid enough. And, well, certainly it's very easy to make useful idiots. Like, there's this really retarded movement called the breatharian movement, where people are claiming that, and this has been going on since like the 70s or something like that.
Spider Spectre, couldn't you just see a picture of a yoga position and mimic it? What does yoga instruction versus just a yoga book any different? I don't know. Now, there's possibly subtleties with it, but in this day and age, I mean, maybe it's kind of the difference between learning proper form for, say, push-ups versus having like a gym instructor observe your form and work with it and like give you some corrections. There might be subtle differences, but not being a professional in yoga myself, I couldn't really say how distinct those are. And it's not like you can do yoga competitively. You can't make money off of it, so I'm trying to make really confused faces here because I am quite confused on this, but the avatar is just kind of limited. But no, I'm trying to think, like, what exactly could you do with yoga that would require you to get some kind of formal instructor in the modern day, of all things? Like, let's be honest, you don't really need a lot of... To do the hands-on, you just kind of need the video instruction or the book instruction. You don't need someone lecturing you. Like, I've seen most of these classes that they are just a social gathering point for primarily females. Like, let me... Hey, maybe a bit of a hot take here. But how many guys become yoga instructors just because they want an easy way to meet and talk with women? I'd say that number is greater than zero. How great, I can't say, but I'm pretty sure it's greater than zero. Let's keep going. We are not even halfway through this. We are already 40 minutes into this live stream. This is, ugh.
Maybe even longer than that. Maybe it started with yoga. So maybe my own group is the problem with this. But anyway, there are these people who claim that all they have to do to eat, they don't have to eat food, they don't have to drink water. All they have to do to survive is just breathe air. And now that claim might have worked by itself in the 70s, but now we've gotten a little bit more scientific as a population, so it doesn't work now. So what they've done is they've gotten a little bit extra scientific, and they say, well, we have carbon in the air, we have oxygen in the air, and we have nitrogen in the air, and those are all the basic building blocks of all the materials in our body. By the way, what about phosphorus? And there's plenty of other materials that you...
It's just some random guy. I wonder how many guys think learning yoga will get them punyiti. I guarantee you it is a number higher than 0.
need that are not in the air. Well, there's a little bit of phosphorus in the air, but not nearly at the amounts that you need to actually survive. Because phosphorus is the basic component of all energy production in the body. You have this molecule called ATP. The P part is the phosphorus molecule. It loses a phosphorus molecule and goes to ADP. So it goes from 3 phosphorus to 2 phosphorus, and that produces energy. And so not nearly enough of that's in the air. So they've tried to get a little bit more scientific, but even if you did not know that, the things I just said about how the body works, or that there's water in the air, or carbon in the air, and stuff like that, you could really easily test this. All you have to do is just sit the person in a room for a week and say, okay, you have no food, you have no water, go ahead and survive. And then you can measure their weight before, and you can measure the 10 or 15 pounds they lost in that week from not eating, and then you can say, well, you're a fucking liar. Of course, what they'll try to do is they say, well, the air is not pure enough here. They'll make up some bullshit like that. And so, okay, well, we'll put you in a place where the air is pure, and then we'll test it there. And this time we'll put you in there for a month or so, and make it so that you're very close to.
Does hardwood intimidate you? It's strong and independent.
I don't know. I work with hardwood regularly. I step on it all the time, and in certain scenarios, I can make my own. So I wouldn't exactly call it intimidating. but thanks for the donation, not your karate instructor 69. Let's keep going.
Starvation, basically. Or it's like the psychics. I remember there's a psychic called Sylvia Brown on Montel Williams. How many people fucking watch that show and watch this dumb bitch psychic? And
apparently you do. Like, seriously, you know more about freaking reality crap television than I do. So maybe if you want to ask these kind of questions, you got to kind of look in the mirror. And freaking crap psychics, I mean, I've done a little bit of the psychic work. If you're coming at it honestly, it can, at the very least, help some people realize things that they kind of need to think about. But actively predicting the future, yeah, I'd be a little hard-pressed to say that you can find a person that can do that. At least in my years of searching, I haven't found anyone sufficiently convincing. But let's keep going.
Believed her. She said one of the things she would do is she'd like find bodies of children or something like that. Maybe she like succeeded once just by randomly guessing. But there was this one family who asked, oh, where's our son? And she's like, your son is dead. He's been dead for about a year. And then a year later or so, they actually found their son. So the bitch got caught. Or they have like James Randi who will sit there and test psychics, and nobody's ever passed that psychic test. So basically what you want to do when you're trying to weed out a liar is you want to see how they stand up to criticism. That's what you do with any sort of idea. Like if you're trying...
Really? To find out a liar, you see how they stand up to criticism. Well, once again, we have a hey Sean, look in the mirror moment. But let's keep going.
Trying to make a car, you don't just build whatever you think and let it run on the road. You do lots of different crash tests. You try to break it intentionally, even when you fix a car. Like I was fixing a lock on my car door about 6 months ago or so with a friend because I'm not super knowledgeable about cars. And when we finished fixing it, he would sit there and try to break the lock to see if he would force the look open and close and open and close. He like 200 times to make sure that damn thing worked. Because at least if he broke it then, we could fix it. But if it broke later, if it broke when I was at work, if it broke when I was at some event, if it broke when I was in the middle of Los Angeles or something like that where it's dangerous, then well, that would be pretty bad. better for it to break when we can still fix it than to break when in a serious event. And that tends to be how ideas translate well, is if they stand up to criticism. So all these people who are trying to be liars, they will do everything they possibly can to avoid criticism. I mean, look what they do with global warming. Anytime you criticize that, which is fine, every sort of scientific idea is allowed to be criticized. Even the fucking law of gravity is allowed to be criticized. There was a TED Talk on this a couple years ago where the guy says the law of gravity is wrong. And here's how I know it's wrong. It's that if you look at the position of the Earth at this time and place in the year, and you look at it some other time of the year, it actually changes. The constant 9.2 meters per second or whatever changes to 9.23 meters per second at this part of the year. And that's really important that you know that, because if you don't know that, your calculations will be off. And it depends on how small the thing is or how accurate you need to be. But if you need to be super, super accurate and you're off by 0.04, that's a pretty big deal. So even things like that are allowed to be criticized. But when you try to criticize global warming, when you say things like, well, it's very convenient that the answer to global warming is government taxes. Isn't there any other answer besides the carbon tax? Or what about the 90% or 99% of scientists disagree, or whatever, 95% of scientists agree? Well, okay, when you look at that stat, it's actually just a consensus of papers, and like half of those papers aren't even about global warming or about man-made climate change. So it's like 10% of those papers actually say what you want. Even the 10% are very, very weak data. So
Yeah, foundations of science. Like, he's getting into like determining liars versus the scientific method, which, yes, to find the truth, you are supposed to poke at a hypothesis through a whole bunch of different methods. But I mean, yes, conflating science and climate grifting with, people who are just straight up grifting about things. Yeah, that ain't aging well for you, Sean, because guess what? It's because you've been caught grifting, caught spouting off a whole bunch of bullshit, that this series of meetings has actually come about. But again, what's actually changed? How much impact are my videos re-listening to you and poking at your stuff actually having? It's not like all your subs disappeared. In fact, I'm pretty sure a good chunk of your subs are dead anyway. The channel's probably not doing super well from what little I've seen. I haven't really... I mean, I'm not subbed to you anymore. But you haven't really put out any content I'd think of as interesting for years. So... anyway, let's see. Dragon Lord Peter. Kind of on Chronic's thoughts on Think Before You Sleep. The guy obviously is an envious piece of shit who never got the girls. Once he did, he abandoned everything he talked about. I mean, like, let's be honest, this was a guy who thought that MGTOW was all in the red pill rage. And he thought that, oh, I'm better than the red pill rage. I'll lead people in. Well, if we assume projection in this case, then, yeah, Sean was probably, at least for a period of time, pissed off at women for not wanting him. And so he jumps into red pill content, starts making it, and then once he gets high enough socially in the red pill community, and women start showing attention to him, then he drops it and starts to go off. Which, let's see, I think he has a higher view count than Brittany Venti. It has been a while since I looked at any of their channels, so let's find a tab here in my massive collection of tabs. I have way too many tabs open. There we go. Look up real quick. Think Before You Sleep. He currently has 675,000 subscribers. Venti, 174,000. So he has over 3 times as many subs as Brittany Venti. So, like, that's the thing. If it was the other way around, if she had 3 times as many subs as Sean, there's no way that she'd even have the remotest interest in him. So, yeah, makes Makes sense. Like, you got a big channel, got a lot of subs by riding the anti-woke trade and building up a lot of cred with the MGTOW community, and then as soon as he's big enough to get attention from females, he jumps away. Interestingly enough, I wonder how much, because this thing, he is over 3 times as many subs, close to 4 times, really. Does that mean that you need to be 3 to 4 times as popular as a woman before she'll give you any attention? Would be interesting to break down the numbers, honestly, but let's keep going. This is going to be a long one, I can tell.
But even people like Neil deGrasse Tyson will call you a climate denier, will call you an insane person, or will call you a bad person if you disagree with climate change. Or global warming, but they stopped calling it global warming because Al Gore was wrong with all his models. So that's what they'll do. They'll try to be immune to criticism. The second thing people will do when they're lying or when the media lies is they will be very unspecific about what they're talking about. So this, I've been going around YouTube a little bit because somebody posted on my comment section about.
They'll get vague about what they're talking about. Might be worth saving that little clip and having that as a response for some of the things you say, Sean. Because, again, you ain't exactly been batting 100 with a lot of your takes, especially during your live streams. So, but that's another tangent. Let's keep going.
How much he hates vegans. And so I watched one of his videos, which is basically a carnivore diet. And vegans and carnivores are polar opposites. Vegans eat only plants, carnivores only eat meat. And so they're natural enemies. And because I watched a couple of his videos, because he wanted to debate, and I watched a couple of his videos to see what kind of person he was, and it turns out he was just kind of nuts. I got a bunch of other carnivore diet videos that were very much the same. And one thing I've noticed is that vegans do the same thing, so I'm not letting vegans off the hook for this, is they say, well, your body has all these toxins in it, and the only way you're going to cleanse these toxins is with a plant-based diet. To which, in my mind, I say, what the fuck is a toxin? If I don't know exactly what you're talking about, how am I supposed to know if I've actually fixed the problem? If I just say, like, if I'm trying to do more push-ups or something like that, let's say this. I'm going to go to the gym to get stronger. If I just say I want to get stronger, how the hell do I define that? I don't know. Or I could be specific and say, I want to be able to do 10 push-ups. That way, I know exactly if I've succeeded doing 10 push-ups or if I've failed. So if I do 10 push-ups, I win. If I do 4 push-ups, I failed. There's a very, very exact measurement for getting stronger. Whereas when you're talking with these certain cultist vegans, they say, well, we have toxins that you have to cleanse. How do I know when I've actually cleansed the toxins? You don't know. On the opposite side of that, I was watching these carnivore diet videos who were
only 10. What is he, 8? Yeah. Yeah, I know. Like, personally, I consider not being able to do 25 in one, like in one set, as and proper form, mind you, not any like half-assed ones. But if you can't do at least 25 proper form ones in one setting, you need to start doing them every day until you can do at least that. Like, and I consider that a low bar to go over for a man. But that's a side tangent. God, seriously, 9 minutes to go, guys. Holy.
criticizing vegans for saying the word toxins, and then they would do the same shit, and they would say you can't eat plants because plants have all these anti-nutrients in them, or meat has certain fat-soluble chemicals that you don't get in plants. Well, that's very unspecific. What the hell are you talking about? How do I know if I'm going to get the right chemicals? What if certain types of meat have the fat-soluble chemicals I need, but other types of meat don't? And so I always find it funny when people accuse you of using some particular evil strategy, and then they just go ahead and use the same exact strategy themselves. It's like everybody who says,
like saying that you haven't done enough research on me, meanwhile I'm going to call Undead Chronic a MGTOW. Yeah. It's amazing how much Think Before You Sleep of the past can roast Think Before You Sleep of the present.
well, you're a racist, you stupid white male. It's the same thing. And it's very cult-like, it's very, very dishonest. And well, certainly in this case, it's the second principle. It's the lack of specificity. People who are being honest with you, they will be very, very specific about what they're talking about. People who are liars can't be specific because they don't know. Like if you're trying to determine someone's a liar, and they say, well, I was here on Tuesday, and I was at this place. Oh, well, you were at this place. Well, what was the color of the roof?
Well, no, No, I wouldn't say that that's entirely true. People who are lying, they can absolutely be very specific. You're conflating people who are lying with people who are trying to speak from a place of ignorance and speak with authority on the subject. Like, you can be absolutely specific. Like, here's the thing. This was an argument that I genuinely heard for vegetarianism / veganism. I heard that humans are not meant to be carnivores because we don't have the stomachs for it and we can't catch prey species. Now, that is somewhat specific. It is completely incorrect. Also, humans don't have fangs, therefore they're not meant to eat meat because they don't have the same jaw structure or stomach structure as, say, a wolf or coyote. Is that true? It is true that we don't have fangs and we don't have the exact same stomach structure as those animals. Yes. Is that specific? It is a very specific argument. Is the conclusion accurate? Absolutely not. But you can absolutely present specific enough details while being completely untrue. So a lack of specificity, it's an indicator that someone is not telling the truth. But it is also not an indicator that someone is necessarily lying. It just means that they are ignorant. People can make very specific lies. So, not your best take here, but let's keep going.
Or what was the color of the front door or something like that? Something that they would easily know if they were actually there. This is how you easily poke holes in stories, and this is how they were poking holes in the Christine Ford story with all kinds of easily known questions. If she was actually at that event, she would easily be able to answer this stuff, and this is why I think Christine Ford's a big liar. So the last thing people do if they're trying to lie to you, if they're trying to manipulate you, if they're trying to start a cult, basically, is they will make sure that in every possible way that you are not self-sufficient. So what the media does is they say, well, you're black, so things are unfair for you, which means that no matter how hard you try, just because you're black, you'll never succeed as much as a white person. They're doing that to make you dependent on their media system. Second way they'll go about that is they will just teach you data points. They won't actually teach you the process by which people learn. This is the major problem I have about school, because I've been a teacher for 6 years, or actually a little bit longer than that, actually 8 years or so, and I've always taught processes behind certain things as opposed to the actual information points, because the information points don't matter if you can't figure out the material for yourself. And so when I teach...
Aren't you teaching yoga? Like, were you a teacher of something other than yoga? Because you refer to your students, but you've only ever said that you're a yoga teacher so far, unless I've missed something in the past 20 some odd videos. When the heck are data points relevant for yoga teaching? Like, are you a teacher at like a public school, a private school, post-secondary education, or are you a yoga teacher? When the heck is being a yoga teacher requiring you to explain processes and data points? You are teaching physical exercise, like specific poses to hold for certain periods of time, and perhaps even a ordered sequence for them. When the heck are processes and data points relevant to that?
Yoga, I don't just teach do this, do this, do this, do this. I say do this because of this, and if you know that you're doing this because of this, you can apply it other places without me having to tell you. If I just say do this, do this, do this, you always have to come back to me to get yoga lessons, and you can never figure things out for yourself. You never really volunteer.
Yeah, yoga. It's yoga. He's talking about yoga. What the? It's yoga. It's yoga. Where the heck are data points and processes relevant for this? Just, jeez. Yeah, God, blitz through the past. Still a good 6 minutes to go. Jeez, we're over an hour into this stream. 6 minutes into the first video. Jeez.
Terribly there. And, well, school does the same exact thing. School does... The reason for Scantron tests, I think, is twofold. One, when you do electronic voting, it's very much so fill in the blank. So if I'm doing a Scantron, what every teacher will tell you is if you don't know the answer, guess or mark C, because that's most likely to be the answer. So you look at a Scantron, it looks a lot like a voter ballot, and if you are doing a voter ballot and you don't recognize the people on the ballot, well, you want to make sure you fill in all the answers. So I don't know who this candidate is, but their name sounds better than that candidate, so I'm going to fill in that answer because I want to make sure I don't want to look like a fool if I have a bunch of unmarked spots on my vote. And that's not how I vote at all. If I don't.
Who the heck worries that they're going to look like a fool on their voting ballot? What? No one cares. You could literally, like, you could put nothing. You could write a manifesto. You could draw some sort of obscene thing. Like, what the heck? A voting ballot is not a right or wrong. It is, what is your preference? It was like, oh, well, I voted for this person, but I didn't know any better. It's like, and I don't want to be embarrassed. What, the person who is going to look at your anonymous voting ballot for a total of 3 seconds, determine whether it's a vote for a particular candidate or whether it's a wasted ballot and just toss it in the bin. Like, you're worried about being embarrassed like that? This isn't a teacher at school who's going to be grading your Scantron card or whatever and thinking, oh, wow, this person's an idiot. They thought it was C, when really the true answer is A. What the ever? I think, dude, it's clear that you needed to make the transition to scripted videos. And if somehow this turns out to be a scripted video, somehow, it's like, wow, you need to hire a better script writer.
Who the hell you are, I bleed that category blank. But people have been so brainwashed and so trained to making sure they fill in all the answers from Scantron tests that they are probably prone to do that. And so when I look at this stuff, and when I look at schools and what's happened with public education and why there are almost never any open answer tests, unless you're in like a science class like chemistry where you can't Scantron test that. Even in the more basic levels of chemistry, they still do Scantron tests. But once you start getting into real stuff, you can't do that. But now my thought on that is that the reason there are Scantron tests in school is to just basically indoctrinate you, is to say that, well, there's no sort of reasoning behind why.
No, I mean, maybe, but simply, no. The reason that they do Scantron tests is because a Scantron test can be marked by a machine. It's quick, it's easy, and the teacher doesn't have to do a whole lot of effort to mark individual long-form essays. Not to mention, like, Scantron's probably got some kind of deal with the government or whatever, and they get paid for Scantron tests, but no. Scantron is done because it is way faster to mark a Scantron test than it is to hand mark an individual multiple choice test, which in turn is way faster to mark than a short or long form answer test. That's why. Saying that it is done for the purposes of indoctrination, I'm sorry, I think I need a little more data points than what you're offering here. But let's keep going.
The answer is the answer. It's just the answer. So what year was George Washington born? Oh, he was born in the 1700s, whatever date he was actually born in. And that's answer C on the test. Oh, what was the Revolutionary War? Oh, it's answer D. Oh, what was this? Or what's a molecule? Oh, that's answer A. There's no how do we find it out? How do we know that molecules exist? How do we know what electrons are? Like what's an electron microscope look like? Or what type of method how do people even theorize that these things exist? How do they even know to look for it in the first place? None of that stuff is talked about. All that's talked about is the answer. And so that's a way to say what we're training you to do is that when we tell you something is right, it is right. So if you are listening to the news and they say that this is a certain way, that's a certain way. Because if I teach you the process, if I teach you how to figure out what is right, if I teach you how to...
I dare you guys to try to explain how we figured out that molecules and atoms existed initially. Because we didn't find them out by inventing the electron microscope first. The atom was initially a theory conducted by Greek philosophers when they had none of this tech. Like, it was just a bunch of philosophical debating. Are you like, and not between children or even, well, maybe teenagers, but at the very least Like, they were by and large grown men having these kinds of discussions. So you want to take like foundational theories and then try to rationalize them out from the ground up with a bunch of children, half of which are women. Teachers are not going to put in that much effort. It is hard enough to get 30 students just to stay in line and focus on topics as is. And now you're trying to get into the processes. Like, dude, you teach yoga. You teach yoga. That shit ain't hard. It is not hard to do. And I can't even think of what kind of foundational philosophies you might need. Because guess what? I don't need to know the foundational philosophies of yoga to know how to position my arms and legs. Like, maybe if you had some kind of degree in science or whatever, like maybe if you could speak a little more eloquently on history or science, then maybe I'd give you some kind of credibility. But you're talking about your instructions of yoga as though you're at some kind of high school or post-secondary institution trying to convey foundational truths upon impressionable youth. Like, fuck, man. Like, you are out of your depth in this discussion.
Figure out what an atom is, or how they figured out, or what the relationship to George Washington, the Revolutionary War was, or what the philosophy behind those moments were, you're going to be able to think for yourself. And if you can think for yourself, then you can easily disprove me. You might be able to look at things online and say, hey, let's wait until we hear why the people in the Trump hats were smirking at the Indian guy until we make a judgment about it. You might be a little bit more patient. You might be able to say, okay, well, this, and this.
Well, no. By and large, people who would think for a longer period of time about this kind of stuff, they're not going to care. Like, why would people care about the Nick Sandmann incident? Why would people care? People wouldn't care unless they had some kind of emotional connection to it in the first place, which means they're going to be emotional about the subject. Anyone who can stop and think logically about this, they're not going to have an emotional investment initially, so they're not going to care one way or another as to who was right, who was wrong. Like, was anyone killed? No. What were the consequences of this? Oh, feelings were hurt. The bigger story here is not the incident itself, it's the media's portrayal of the incident. That's really why people care about the whole Nick Sandmann thing. It's because the media was caught intentionally creating a false narrative for the sake of riling up a portion of their audience. That's why people gave a shit. The incident itself, no one cares. So, trying to say, hey, we need to be more rational so we can dissect news stories that are meant to feed off emotions. No, you are not going to find someone who has an understanding of the process of discovering atoms and then connect that with people who can be emotionally disconnected from news stories and yet also care enough to actually want to figure out the truth. This is an apples to oranges comparison. So we're almost done, guys. 3 minutes to go.
Is why this piece of information is wrong. They don't want you knowing that, because if you know that, if you know how to debate them, their ideas don't work. And they have to use manipulation tactics. Like back to Anita Sarkeesian, who was very big in 2016 until she basically blew off the face of the earth because people, well, she still exists, but she's not nearly as prominent as she was.
She's not as prominent because she's not as public, but she's still getting paid a bunch of money by AAA game companies to work as a consultant. So she's hardly irrelevant. She's just not public anymore, but her influence still seeps into shit.
Because she was wrong. She would sit there and suggest that all video games are sexist and racist and make all these fallacious claims, and then people would say, okay, well, we'll contend that, but let's debate. You know, if you bring your video games are sexist, I'll disagree, and then we'll publicly debate and we'll see who's right. She would always say, no, I'm not going to do that. Or she would say things like, she'd do like the Ocasio-Cortez thing where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was...
Oh, so people who have something to hide won't go on and debate against people who have alternatives, and they're going to spout false narratives such as, oh, well, I'm not going to go on just to be insulted. Yeah. Yeah, sounds like someone... Again, Sean, look in the mirror. You are the very thing that you criticize. 100%, you are the exact kind of person that you are being so critical of.
Invited to a debate by Ben Shapiro, and she said, well, you're a sexist for wanting to debate. She can't debate Ben. Ben's really good at debate, and Ben knows his shit, and she, who doesn't even know the three branches of government, would never want to debate with him. So, of course, she has to make something up. She has to say that I can't.
Yeah, has to make something up. Has to make up, well, I'll just be insulted for a couple hours and I'm not going to do it. Yeah, you have to make something up to avoid a debate with someone who you know you can't debate against.
Can't do it. And back to Anita Sarkeesian, people said, well, why don't you just prove that you play games? Let's see your Steam profile, because if I see someone's Steam profile, I can see how long they've been playing a certain game. And she would say, no, it's locked. And it's locked because she probably has zero playtime on those games. She probably didn't even write the scripts to those things. People were saying that her ex-husband, useful idiot, was the one who was actually writing the scripts for all those materials for the feminist frequency videos. And so I'm going to leave it at that. I think things are going very, very positive. Even though it seems like things are negative, I think the only reason that's happening is because we've now become aware of all the problems that have gone on for the past couple decades, or for the past 100 years or so, and people are raging, they're getting mad, they're saying, oh, fuck this and everything else, which is good, because we need to get mad. Like that movie, The Network, where that guy says, I don't know what to do, but the first thing we need to do is start getting angry. Otherwise, nothing will change. Anger is the way you fight back. Anger is the deterrent of fear, and you will not be able to, unless you can get angry, you'll just be a pushover. So, at least in the past, white people have just said, people have been calling whites racist for 50 years, maybe even longer than that. It is only till recently that white people have said, well, fuck you. We are the least racist group of people in the entirety of the world, and you're still calling us racist? You're a piece of shit. And we're tired of taking this. We're tired of being called racist. And meanwhile, again, like I said before, you can call us peckerwoods, you can call us crackers, you can call us rednecks and honkies and white trash. And that's not racist, but we're the racist ones. And so white people are starting to get mad, and everybody's starting to get, the MGTOWs are starting to get mad. Conservatives are starting to get pissed off. This is a good thing. This is a thing that will create change. And, well, a little review, it'll create change in the liars who will not debate, who will not allow conflict or not allow criticism, who will not be specific about the things they're talking about, and who will try to just sit there and say, this is the answer because I'm right, and don't ever reason with me because I don't like reason. So I'll call that a video. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for watching. If you're new, please subscribe to the channel if you like the content. If you don't, well then, I guess you can move along. Like the video if you like the video. Comment if you have a comment below. Otherwise, see you in the next one.
Well, again, as I say with these, you won't, because he has deleted this video as well as many others from his archive. So if you think I missed something in this and you want to get your 2 cents in, either comment below the live stream or the segment once I finally get around to chopping all these live streams up into video response segments. But I'll take a minute to just go through the comments here, and we'll put on some intermission music while I grab another drink, and then we'll get back into the next video. So, girlfriend, hey, Grey Ghost, remember me? Yep, hey, hope you're doing well. Have people in my family who still believe that Nick Salmon is bad. The theory is that, for the most part, people believe what is advantageous to their cause. Advantageous to their cause, or personally, I would think it's whatever their social group believes. Because keep in mind, you're probably not going to hear any alternative narratives about Nick Sandman aside from what the mainstream media tells you, if you don't consume any sort of media, well, beyond what's on television. And even then, you'd probably need to catch, at the very least, Fox News. And even then, they still are in lockstep with the other channels on other stuff. He just think before you sleep isn't good at making points. No, no, he is not. Maybe I wonder if we'll actually be able to tell when he switches to proper scripted videos, because right now it really sounds like he just grabs a topic, rambles for 15 to 30 minutes, and then just posts that as a final video. Vitlos, is Sean a bagel boy? I don't know. It's possible, but I don't know. Did someone say shekels where? Well, the donation link at the top is where you can throw some shekels at me. Don't know where anyone else said them. Let's see. Matre, I have a tech question. Is there a way to find all chat emojis while watching on a phone? I can only see a couple of them. I'll be honest, Matre, I don't know. I don't use a lot of the emojis myself. And I don't know about much of the phone. Yeah, I wouldn't know how to do it on mobile. I can kind of see how to do it on PC, but phone-wise, don't know. All right, so we will put up Ava for a minute. Got some stuff I'm might be running by Chronic later. So I produced a bunch of these. We'll just pick one of them. So enjoy composition 312 while I grab something else to drink, guys, because I'm not making it through 2 more of these sober. I don't know. That one's... I don't know. Like, whatever that main instrument is, it's just hitting a little hard and kind of irregular. So, I don't know whether or not that one will make it to the final cut. But it's only the first one generated out of, like, literally, like, 30 to 40 beats. So, they don't all have to be winners. Now, it definitely needs adjusting, but hey, this was generated in like 2 minutes out of a specific sound profile, so heck, if even 10% of these turn out to be good, I consider that a win. Let's pull up the next one in the series here, because if I'm going to get through 3 of these, I can only pray that the next one's going to be shorter.
It has been one hell of a week for me.
All right, so yeah, it might have been a little offbeat. That song was kind of weird, but who knows? Maybe there's going to be a winner somewhere else in there, and it might be the foundation for another Chronic beat. We shall see. But for the main attraction here, we are going to get into episode 20. Actually, let me record this. Maybe try to make it easier to do a segment. So, archive episode 25 of Think Before You Sleep's deleted videos. Someone almost killed me. Let's begin.
It has been one hell of a week for me, and what helps me in times that are not so great. I remember a quote from one of Jordan Peterson's biblical lectures where he says, well, hell is a bottomless pit, because no matter how bad it is, it can certainly always get worse. And so maybe it makes you think, well, I'm grateful because this thing that happened to me that was really bad could have been far worse. And my week started out like this. I had a bad night last Friday where I drank some soda. Now I cut out soda in my diet for 3 years, and I brought it back in because it makes it a little bit easier to hang out in parties where it's like, oh, I just drink water. It makes me a little bit less socially awkward. I figured I'll give the people of the community just that one thing. I'll poison myself just a little bit so that way I can be a little bit more acceptable publicly. But of course, the reason I stopped drinking soda altogether is because I knew I would start drinking it at home and outside of public events or even family events. And I had one of those cases last week where I drank about a liter of soda, I think a little bit more than that. And I drank it before I went to bed. And by the way, I've lost all my soda experience in these past 3 years. So I forgot why I've done certain things. And one of the reasons you don't drink soda right before you go to bed, because if it's like Coca-Cola, you won't be able to sleep. And so I drank this big ass bottle of soda right before I went to sleep, about maybe 2 hours or so before that. And I proceeded to sit in bed for 3.5 hours trying to fall asleep.
I mean, I guess when you're not used to soda, that's a thing. For someone like you, consumes it on a fairly regular basis. I basically need to chug an energy drink before going to bed to be awake for any period of time. But then again, by the time I actually go to bed, I'm usually completely exhausted. So, yeah. We'll see where he's going with this, because apparently his really bad time starts off with him drinking a bottle of soda.
It took so long that I said, fuck it. I'll just stay awake. I don't care. I'll teach my classes on zero sleep. I've done things like that before. Like when I was in martial arts and we would go to a tournament for a week, we would.
What? Teach classes on zero sleep? You said you were awake for 3 hours. Like, unless you're only getting 3 hours of sleep a night, being awake for 3 hours means you're going to lose like maybe half your sleep, maybe a little over the majority. But you should at the very least be able to pull off a 2-hour nap. Although it's probably hyperbolic here, so we'll just let that slide and keep going.
Basically not sleep that entire week and then get our asses kicked the entire week. Well, beat some people up as well, but usually you're going to take blows no matter what type of division you're in, unless you were just...
Spire Spectre. Sounds like kid stuff losing sleep from soda. Well, that's the thing. If you've been on a no-soda diet for, I think he said, a couple of years, then yeah, the rush of caffeine and sugar might actually set your body off. So it's believable, to me at least. Maybe other people have done similar things and it hasn't bothered them, but it's plausible.
Really, really good. And so we would do all that on no sleep. Like I'd go and go from 8 o'clock in the morning from about...
Sorry, Super Turbo Death Shark. He is such a feminine storyteller. I'm waiting for 5 minutes of juxtaposition of why he wore a blue shirt that day. We might actually get that. It's possible. Let's keep going.
Flight at LAX to Texas and be up the entire flight. And then we'd go to bed, and then, well, nobody would really let us sleep because we're all in a different place and everybody wants to talk. And so you'd sleep for like 2 hours and then go compete the next day for a nice 15-hour day. And then get 2 hours late the next night, too. And so I've been through some pretty bad times. So I figured, you know what? It's just one day. As soon as I get home, as soon as I'm done, I've got 2 classes to teach that day because it's a Saturday, so it's not as bad. And, I'll sleep the rest of the day. Couldn't be that easy. As I was leaving for class, I was walking down some stairs, and I tripped. I stumbled is probably the better word for it, because tripping would maybe imply that I fell forward. I kind of fell backwards and slipped and slid, and I smacked my foot on the floor that was on the last step, and I bruised my heel. Now, keep in mind, I was in a rush, so I didn't really care to make sure that it wasn't broken. Well, look at me. So I spent about the 3.5 hours or so it took to be done with those classes. I spent that whole time thinking, oh shit, it's broken. I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. Fortunately, I come home. It's not broken.
You slipped on the stairs and bruised your heel. Really? You see, this is... I don't know. Like, that sounds like a vegan problem. That sounds like someone who's not getting enough nutrition. Like, I don't know. Like, slipping on the stairs, maybe even, like, bouncing down a good chunk of them on your ass. I don't know. I can't recall a time when stumbling on the stairs has ever involved bruising or breaking. Normally, to fracture something, it requires something a bit more significant than something like this. Because if you didn't fall forward, then that means that your foot slipped and your heel went down, what, one step? 6 inches at most? And then I'm assuming that you fell on your ass? Like, bruising hurts to the point that you think it's broken? Really? I don't know, maybe you can hit it in a weird way and it feels that way, but sounds like a weird experience to me.
It's there was no swelling, there's no edema, there's no. I did a little. Let's call it a flick test. Not broken, but very, very bruised and very, very painful. And then the power went out later, so some things.
Why does his voice sound like that? Do you have it on 1.5 speed or something? Yeah, I do. I have it on 1.4 speed right now because because he goes on and on enough trying to listen to it at normal speed. So I need to turn him up to at least 1.3 times speed just to try and get through this stuff in decent time. So, like, for example, like normal speed. Let's see here. We'll switch to... Yeah, so like if we switch to normal speed for playback, like this is what he sounds like at normal speed.
First, it's I don't sleep, then I bruise my heel, then the power goes out, and it gets there's some bad stuff that happened in the classes too that were just made things all the better. And I'm bringing this up because I'm thinking about Carl Jung this week.
Well, that's the thing. He's just going to go on rambling, so I need to turn this up to like 1.5 times speed just so that we can get through this in a half decent amount of time. So, yeah, we listen to this at 1.5 because this sounds like a rambly one, and there's almost 23 minutes of this.
It gets worse than this, so I'll leave that after I talk about Carl Jung. Is that he would go to like the native tribes. He would go to people who were uncivilized, and I imagine he did this because he wanted to see if technology, if modern philosophy, if modern psychology, if philosophy of the West, philosophy of the East had any sort of effect on cognitive function. So we want to see the most pure human tribes, and what do they act like? Do they act different from us, or do they act the same from us? By the way, this is a pretty amazing feat because you're doing this in like the early 1900s or the mid 1900s, where things we didn't have nearly as much technology at that point. You're doing this maybe you got a pistol in that sense. So these people were, by the way, I was on a family trip to the Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. This was a graduation present from my grandmother, so thanks to her. But we went to the rainforest for the first 5 days or so, and they're like, oh, we can't go over there. We go too far that way, and we'll hit the native tribes, and you don't want to talk to those people. Those people it takes a lot of work to make those people not violent. So the fact that Carl Jung was brave enough to do this is pretty outstanding. And so what he would find is that they would have a lot of different superstitions. And I think the key of superstition is you have a bunch of data, but you have a bunch of things that you don't know. And so there needs to be a story for the things that you don't know so that you don't go insane, or at least some type of activity that keeps you safe enough. And so what might happen is that you're in the rainforest and you see this massive, let's say, avocado tree. Massive avocado tree.
Okay, honestly, I've been listening to him and I'm kind of lost. Like, I have no idea why we are on this tangent about native tribes and going to, what was it, South America or something? So, if I missed something, guys, I'm sorry, but I'm not backtracking the better part of a minute to listen to it again.
But every time you go, let's say, 30 yards north of the avocado tree, somebody dies. Now, you only have, 50 to 100 people in your tribe, and this happens, let's say, 5 times. 5 people die after going past this avocado tree because they're eaten by a jaguar, they're eaten by a tiger. Now, you don't see what happens. You don't see what killed them. They're just missing. And so what you're going to do is you're going to create a story around this avocado tree. You're going to create a story that says, this is the tree of evil. This is the tree that causes people to disappear. Stay the hell away from this tree. Now, that's not technically accurate. It wasn't the tree's fault. It was the tigers. However, because they don't know that, they have to create some type of story to keep people safe. And it could be as far as this. Let's say they find a different avocado tree where the same thing happens. Maybe a tiger hangs around this avocado tree. And they may very well just say, all avocado trees, stay the hell away from it because that's going to get you killed. Because you're displeasing the gods or whatever. Now, it seems a little bit crazy. Well, maybe it doesn't seem crazy. It seems that that's how if I didn't have technology, if I didn't know what a tiger was, if I didn't know that much about the rainforest, if I didn't know much about life or science, I would probably think the same shit. But we're very privileged and very lucky to know the stuff that we know.
I think it makes quite a lot of... it makes sense. If a bunch of people are going north of a weird boundary, entering a particular section of the woods, and you're like, yeah, everyone who goes here dies. Probably shouldn't go there. Primitive or not, modern or not, that just makes sense. Do you need to understand and investigate it? I'm sorry, if you have a tribe of 50 people, you don't exactly have a lot of extra lives to spend. 5 people dying? Now keep in mind, tribe of 50. So, tribe of 50, let's assume 25 men, 25 women. Maybe 20% of that tribe is, underage because they're children or whatever. Losing 5% could cut your workforce down by 25%. That's not insignificant. Whereas in the modern day, we can throw tons of people at some bullshit and then learn about it the hard way. But when one person is 4% of your workforce or more, yeah, you can't exactly afford to throw lives away in scientific investigation. So you're just going to say, hey, let's play it as safe as possible and assume that going in this area means instant death. Why? We're going to make up a reason just to keep people away from it. Because the last thing we need is some stupid teenagers deciding to do a test of bravery and wandering into the forbidden zone. But let's keep going.
And to not be as poorly off as the people before us. Well, long before us, let's say. Some people were quite a bit better off than we are now, philosophically. I would have to say at least, even though maybe not technologically. And there's another idea where this is a very old cliche, which is you don't talk to somebody based off of, you don't listen to people based on what they say. Never listen to what people say. What you should do is watch what people do. You learn who people are by their actions, not by their words. And so you may say that you're not superstitious, but you act very superstitiously. Or it's like science. Like all the new atheists in science who are physicists, they're logical and reasonable, and we only look at things as factually as possible. We'll still act tribalistic. We'll still create the same personality trait that allows racism to occur, the same personality trait that gets people killed for being heretics of the church, all the things that we're trying to get rid of because, the church has done some awful things, of course, the child molestation scams or scandal or mass murder and things like that. Certainly they're not completely innocent. But these people who are scientists were saying they were entirely removed from that. And let's say in physics, if you were a believer in string theory, if you were...
Funnily enough, I'm pretty sure that the body count of atheist collectivist groups is far higher than any religious group. Because, communism, Mao Zedong, was not a religious person. Bigger body count than Genghis Khan. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure you're going to find, if you actually total it up, that atheists... Oh, and that's not including the whole, abortion thing. Because if we're going to actually include abortion upon the list of murders, then, yeah, atheism probably has a higher body count than any religious group by orders of magnitude. I don't think I'd be surprised to find out that atheists have killed 10 times more people than religious groups. And I'm talking all religious groups throughout all of history. So... I don't have the numbers right now to back that up. Someone could probably call me out on that as being utter bullshit. But I think that there's a case to be argued there. Let's keep going.
One of Stephen Hawking's disciples, what you would do is if you found somebody who would criticize string theory, you wouldn't let them in. So they couldn't speak at your conferences. You would destroy them politically or publicly. You would ruin their careers just because they didn't believe in string theory. So the same tribalist.
MTNXII, watch what they do, not their words. Famous last words. Absolutely. Again, another incidence of think before you sleep of the past, having words critical of think before you sleep as the present. 3.5 to 4 years is apparently a very long time. But at least that shows why he's deleted this video. Oh, keep in mind, we are about a third of the way into this video, and he's got off on this weird tangent about tribalistic beliefs. He has still not gotten into the whole someone almost killed me part.
Nature is present even all the way up the food chain, or all the way up the intellectual chain, and we are not that much different from our native predecessors. We just have a couple extra gadgets and a couple extra philosophical tools that somebody luckily figured out so that we can benefit from them. So you watch what people do, you watch their actions, and I think superstition is something that is present in all of us. In fact, I like to use superstition to my advantage. Because when I'm teaching students in yoga, I will tell them, I've observed this, I've observed people's superstitions ruin their exercise experience, where they'll say, I'm going to go to yoga for my very first time. And I should be just as, I'm pretty good. I'm a pretty above average person, even though they're not, even though it's like their first time exercising. I should be pretty good at this yoga stuff. Yoga's not that hard. And they go into the class with these highly unrealistic expectations, and then they work out like a 9 out of 10 on how tired they are, and they burn themselves out. And they say, even though I'm doing a 9 out of 10 right now, I'm doing working as hard as I can, I'm still not half as good as that person across the room, or the person next to me, the person across the room, the person in front of me. I must suck at this. And then they're going to do it a couple more times, and they're not going to be as good, because of course it takes you years to be as good as some of the people in the class, even maybe just 6 months to meet the average student, because most new people quit. And most
Keep in mind, this is yoga. Like, what's the scale of being good at yoga? Being able to hold a specific pose for an extended period of time? Like, how do you be good or bad at yoga? Yes, flexibility and the training of certain muscle groups to hold stuff in static motion. Yeah, doing it for years would make you inherently better than someone who's just starting. I don't know. Is that superstition? I'd classify more of that as ego. But again, he reads very deeply into his yoga instructor stuff. I think he might be reading into it too much, but not really having much. I mean, I could draw parallels to my own kind of career stuff, but I just think that he's going way, way too deep with his yoga teachings. I don't think it's quite as deep or impressive as he likes to present it as, but it's neither here nor there. Let's just keep going.
people in the class are people who've been there for a while, so of course you're not going to be as good for a while. In fact, when I took martial arts, it took me 3 years to catch up to all the other people that were in the class, or at least be reasonably good before somebody else who was new actually stayed. So that's much how yoga is as well. Now, my martial arts classes were pretty significantly smaller, but it's still the same process. So what you're starting off with is failure, 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 failure. Whereas if you flipped it around, and so you're going to be superstitious and say, I must just be a failure. If you flip this around and you make it easy, if you say, you know what, this is my first yoga class, I'm just gonna survive the class. I'm gonna maybe 60% of what I can do. I'm gonna make things simple. I'm not gonna treat things too hard, and I'm gonna survive the class. If you think of it that way, well, it's pretty simple to make it through a 55-minute class or an hour-long class. And as long as you made it through, you win. And the next time you say, I'm gonna survive this class too, and you do that for like 2 weeks. You now have 2 weeks of success, and so any sort of failure that you might get, you can say, well, I've already been successful over here, so this must have just been some bad example. I'm actually a successful person, so I'm going to keep going back, and you use your stupid...
Matre, the only problem with religion compared to atheism is that a set of rules that should be obeyed by believers can be compromised by picking the wrong preachers, like fat priests on expensive cats. That's not exclusive to religion. Like, atheism still requires you to listen to anointed preachers, your scientists, your experts. If you're going to follow any sort of belief system, you usually have some kind of figure in authority. So, I think that it would be very hard to find a problem with following a religious group that you could not find a parallel in atheism. Open to being proven wrong here, but I haven't been able to figure one out myself.
Superstitious tendencies to say that you're successful. And it works fairly well. So back to the main part of the story, back to the reason I titled this video the way I titled it, is I've been having problems with my car.
Okay, so we are halfway through the video, and he's now actually getting to the point of how someone almost killed him.
Well, I had problems with my car for about 6 months. And when I would sit at a stoplight, or when I would sit and idle, with my foot on the brake, my car would just start violently shaking. And so it would basically misfire. And my friend and I, and my mechanic, because I have a friend who's really good with cars, like fantastically good at cars. And so him, and my mechanic, we're trying to figure out what this problem is. We fixed fucking everything. We changed out the spark plugs. We changed out the spark plug wires. I changed the idle intake control valve. I cleaned that little flap thing. When you push the gas pedal and the flap thing opens and closes, I cleaned that because...
I'm not sure. Oh, like for atheists, that would be quote-unquote science. Yes. Science, philosophy... like medical expert, like, yeah, nowadays the science has become the religion. Like or whatever is told on television. Your preacher is whoever you believe to be an authority. So, yeah, like the modern day equivalent would be like Fauci or whoever speaks on the science in some sort of authoritative stance. But the foundations of faith seem to be a part of the human condition. The only difference between like religion and atheism is like whether or not they have some kind of mythological deity at the top. But the foundational principles of believing in an authority figure, translating a set of obscure rules for you, that is something that just seems to be a part of the human condition and collectivist, regardless of how you wrap it up. So, unfortunate, but that just seems to be how it is.
That was dirty, and that actually helped because my pedal was getting stuck. Or I had some bad event one day, and my pedal got stuck, and for about a week I had to like push, I had to like extra gas my pedal so I would drive, and that was a little dangerous. So I took care of that real quick, and so that was possibly related to the engine misfiring. But and so it was all that kind of stuff, and we did more than that. I think one more thing, I changed my gas filter, and still, the car would shake. And then finally, my mechanic's like, okay, here's we read the check engine light information because the check engine light didn't come on for like 2 months. And so we had no idea where to look. And so fortunately, as much as people hate that check engine light, it's actually really useful when you're trying to fix the car. And so the check engine light said cylinder 2 misfire. And okay, we've got 2 options since you've already changed the spark plugs.
Funnily enough, guys, if your check engine light goes on and you don't want to blow a bunch of money, you can apparently get a check engine light code reader off the internet for a decent price. And then you can, at the very least, read it yourself rather than having to take it into a mechanic and having them read it for you. So if you're one of those DIY guys who wants to be able to diagnose and solve problems yourself, check out Amazon for a check engine light reader or code reader or whatever. They're out there.
We have the engine coil and we have the injector. We're going to do the engine coil first because
AC, some auto shops read your codes for free. That would be good. I personally don't know of them, but if you do, yes, absolutely get them read however you can. But if they won't read them for free, then it might be a worthwhile investment to get a code reader for yourself.
That's cheaper. And we'll do the injector second if that doesn't work. And so he changed the engine coil, and he's like, I tried it 3 times, your car doesn't shake anymore, I think we're good to go. And so I sat in my car in the parking lot of my mechanic, and I turned it on, and I sat there and waited for like 3 minutes, because I had people take me there, and I said, wait until I say it's okay, because I'm going to sit here for 3 minutes, and if it shakes again, I'm sorry, we got to go back, and we got to let him fix it. And so I stayed there for a couple minutes, nothing shook, nothing bad happened, it was fine. So I started driving home, nothing shook, nothing bad happened, and the whole thing is because before when we made changes, and it would work for like a little bit, like it would work for a couple hours, and then like a day later or so after I'd stopped driving, it would come back again. So I'd say, oh, it's fixed, it's great, we did this thing, this is the thing that was the problem, it's fixed, it's fine, and then a day later it would be broken. So I was really careful about saying the car was fixed. I was very superstitious about it. Maybe I've said in the past I'm not a very superstitious person. I certainly don't act that way. So I've got to contend that I think probably me and everybody else is superstitious in some way. So I wouldn't say it was fixed. I said, okay, I waited a day before and I said it was fixed. How about this time I'm going to wait a month? And after a month, if it doesn't shake, I'll say it's fixed. So 2 months later, I forgot about the whole thing. Because a month is a long time. I'm not sitting here thinking that, I've got to say my car's fixed after a month. 2 months later, I remembered it. And I said, I was sitting at a stoplight, ready to turn left. And I said, I've never dubbed my car as fixed. I was so focused on it because this is a problem I had for 6 months. It was a huge deal, and I thought I was going to have to buy a new car because of this, because I could not figure out what the hell it was.
Now, admittedly, I can kind of relate to this. I got into a bit of a minor car incident earlier this year. And, I'm pretty sure that I've got a wheel bearing that is absolutely shot because of this. Now, is it? I don't know. I'd have to actually take off the wheel, take a look, and see how much the wheel bearing needs to be replaced. But it does feel like the car wants to turn to the right, just naturally. Is that the case? Was it like that before the incident? I can't say for sure because objectively I didn't exactly do any sort of measurements. So, yeah, I can agree with being this superstitious about vehicles because, let's be honest, they are highly complex, mechanical, for lack of a better word, organisms. And it's hard to figure out exactly what is going wrong with them that causes a particular incident. I mean, heck, if this guy's got his mechanic and his friend who's good with cars looking at the bloody thing, and they're not able to figure out exactly what it is, then someone with little experience repairing cars probably isn't going to be able to figure it out like just from feeling the car itself either. So it makes sense to get superstitious about something like a car when so many things can cause so many different issues. You see, I'm a DIY mechanic, got tons of tools, not that hard, just YouTube it, bro. Oh, yeah, no, it's not terribly hard. I was lucky enough that one of my coworkers was able to give me some instructions on how to fix some stuff up, and he was kind enough to provide some supervision. And I've gotten much better at DIY just by having some supervision guidance and a little bit of assistance. So, I'd say absolutely do try to learn to DIY your vehicles. And personally, I don't want any of these newer vehicles. Like, anything past 2010, absolutely not. I want as few electrical components in my vehicles as possible. I want to be able to DIY it. But yeah, that's a side tangent. Let's see where he's going with this, because again, we're almost 2/3 of the way through this, and he still hasn't said how someone has someone almost killed him. But maybe he's getting to that point.
And so I said, I never really dubbed my car fixed. And so, car, you've done great. I dub you fixed. You've done a good job. You haven't shook in 2 months. 3 minutes later, I was at a different stoplight. A guy comes behind me at a red light and smashes into my car and totals it. Now, if that doesn't make you superstitious, I don't know what will. Smashes my car, ruins my bumper, my back bumper, and pushes me into the car in front of me. And that actually, the damage to the front of my car is worse than the damage to the back of my car. The back of my car, the bumper just got bent upwards, but the front of my car, there's all kinds of cosmetic damage. Luckily, none of the actual car is broken. No, the bits like the radiator usually goes out. That's not gone out. My steering has a little bit of an issue. I'm not really sure why.
Okay, so someone smacked into the back of your car and totaled it, but it didn't actually do any damage to the vehicle, just some bumper cosmetic damage. No, totaled means you're totaled. It means there's actual damage. So someone bumped into you from behind, and apparently you were so close to the vehicle in front of you that you ended up smashed. Now, personally, I am super paranoid about traffic lights. I will always keep an eye on the rear view mirror, and I will try to keep a good amount of space between me and the car in front of me. Because I remember a story from Driver's Ed where this one guy, he did do that. He kept an eye on the vehicle in front of him and always made sure there was enough space to get out of it. Because one day someone did actually fail to have their brakes. Like their brakes failed, brake line cut, or whatever. And so they weren't stopping in time for a red light. And this guy was able to see that by paying attention through the rear view mirror. And was able to pull off to the side, warned the guy in front of him to pull off to the side. And this other car barreled through the intersection and hit a street light on the opposite end because their brakes were fucked. Just one of those stories that always stuck with me. So, if you are close enough that someone hitting you from behind while you're holding onto your brakes is enough to smash you into the car in front of you, I'm sorry, man, you were way too close to the car. You were way too close to the car in front of you. Plain and simple. So, yeah, fault of the guy behind you for not being able to brake properly, sure. But there are levels of prevention and precaution that one can take. I guess this is the someone almost killed you. Someone smashed into the back end of your car while you were parked and did cosmetic levels of damage to the front and back of your vehicle. Whatever, let's keep going.
I'm going to have to check that on. It's Friday now. This will probably go up on Saturday, but I'm going to check that on Sunday. But for the most part, outside of the steering, we can say the damage is mostly cosmetic, but the problem is the damage is bad enough for the car to be totaled. Now, I bring you back to that thing I said at the very beginning of the episode, of the YouTube video, is that no matter how bad things are, they can always get worse. And I think the reason for that is a lot of times not only is that true, things can always get worse, but a lot of times a ton of bad things will happen all at the same time. So we started this out at the beginning of the week with...
Let me be honest, guys. To say things will always be worse, I don't agree with that, because I think that if you are actively on fire, and I don't mean in a quick way. I mean you are trapped, you are on fire, your clothes are sticking to your skin and have melded with your skin because your skin has turned to liquid and is bubbling, and it's going to take you hours to die from the flames because it's not that intense. You can't get your head up to actually choke on the smoke and die that way. No, you're just going to burn to death. I'm pretty sure that's about as bad as it gets. Anything short of that, sure, there's a way it could get worse, because you know what? However bad it is, you're probably not actively on fire. But yeah, things can always get worse. That's a very absolute statement, and I'm pretty sure that being on fire for hours on end is probably about as bad as it gets.
I didn't get any sleep. I smashed my foot on the floor. I had some bad. Somebody broke the AC in one of my classes, so now somebody at one of the places I work broke the AC, particularly where I have my biggest following, so it smells like garbage in there when I'm teaching. It pisses everybody off, so that's not great. I've had my car smashed into, and all these bad things are all going to happen all at once. And I think what could happen to make it worse is that you say either two routes. You say, well, this really bad thing happened to me. This is my one bad thing. You know, this is my one car accident per every 10 years or so. It had to happen at some point, so it's happened now. And if you start thinking like that, you stop paying attention. Or you can be so much in shock from bad things happening to you that you, like, let's say in this case, because I couldn't drive my car away, I had to get it towed. Let's say that I could drive my car away, but I'm so shocked in the accident because, one, my car just got totaled, and I thought at the moment that I was going to buy a new car. But two, I smashed my head into the back of my seat, so I could have had a concussion. I hadn't had it checked at that point, so I didn't know what was going on.
Aren't the backs of most seats padded? How far ahead was your head that, like, smashing into the back of your seat would give you a concussion? I'm sorry, what I'm getting from this is that Sean here has, or at the very least had, a very fragile body. Which, from my personal understanding and anecdotes, sounds like just a byproduct of being a vegan. Like, vegans just tend to have incredibly weak bodies susceptible to injuries. Anyway, 5 minutes to go, guys.
And so I could have almost, at that point, I could have just died.
I could have just died. I get into a fender bender where my head smacks into the back of the seat, and that's a near-death experience. In the past year, I have had several 100 pounds fall on me and damn near split my skull apart. Like, actually suffered a skull fracture. I've been closer to death in the past 2 years than this guy's fucking near-death experience. And this guy's talking about a fender bender. Like, he almost got his head smashed in. Jesus. It doesn't even sound like the airbag deployed. He got into a crack up so mild that the airbag didn't even go off. And he's talking like he almost died with a picture of the Grim Reaper as his thumbnail. All right. Oh, punchline took almost 18 minutes to get to, but that was good. Oh, let's wrap this up. Good God.
So what might happen in that case is I'm driving back to a shop or home or whatever. I could not be paying attention because I'm so focused on the accident that I could plow my car into another car, or miss a light or something like that, or make a mistake that could make my life even worse. And so I think what is the most helpful way to think is you can always think that things can always be worse, and bad things all tend to happen at the same time. Because as soon as you let yourself open to one bad thing, it makes it easier for the next bad thing to happen, and the next bad thing, and the next bad thing, until you shift that cycle backwards. And so one of the ways you can do that is stay as calm as possible. Anytime a bad thing happens to you, you always want to be more vigilant. Like that same friend who's really good at fixing cars was also in a private security firm. And if you're going to initiate an ambush, if you're going to attack somebody, you never do it like during the daytime. You never do it like during a regular day. You want to make sure that the environment is as shitty as possible. You're like in the middle of a hurricane or a monsoon or some type of storm or some type of place where you're off your guard. You say, it's a storm, I don't want to be outside, or it's freezing cold, or whatever it is. Whatever bad thing is going to happen, and that's the times where people start to, oh, I don't want to do as much work because things are bad. And that's the time where you need to be vigilant, because that is the best time to attack you. The best time to attack you is when things are shitty, when there's a storm, when there's a hurricane, when all this crap is happening. And the best time for you to have bad things happen to you is when bad things already happened to you. Certainly, a lot of businesses or a lot of mechanic shops are based on your impulse decisions, based on your shock at being in an accident, based on a shock of losing your car or not being able to afford new stuff or whatever. And so they will take advantage of your impulsive decisions and will benefit from that. And so what might have happened is that, well, my car is totaled. What might have happened is I could just say, well, take the car, give me the money whatsoever, and I'll just go buy a new car.
I mean, it's not exactly wrong. Like, when I got into my vehicle crack up, like, I didn't know how much it was going to cost, but it looked like, okay, this is going to cost a bit. And then I get the initial quote, and it's like 2 to 3 times the cost of buying the vehicle. And I'm like, okay, no, I'm gonna get a second opinion here. So, yeah, remaining calm, I guess, is one thing. Not making impulse decisions, yes, that's good advice. But at the same time, when something bad is happening to you, complacency is a problem. Because, okay, yeah, you can say, oh yeah, being in a hurricane is the worst time to attack you. You know what? No, I'm going to completely disagree with that. Because I read a little while ago that most people are most susceptible to attacks close to their homes. When you are most vulnerable is when you are most comfortable. The more unfamiliar your environment is, the more focused you are on the environment, and therefore the more aware and alert you are. So, completely disagree. Like, if you've just had an accident, I would say that, yeah, you're going to be a little more paranoid about vehicles. Maybe you'll actually put some room between the vehicle in front of you and the vehicle behind you. Maybe you'll pay a little more attention in the rear view mirror. In my case, maybe you'll be a little more paranoid about road conditions during shitty weather and won't be speeding as much around fucking corners. No, I completely disagree. Attacking someone in a hurricane, that might be a little more advantageous in terms of getting other people to come help. But people are going to be a little more aware of their environment when they're currently in a shitty situation. Like, who do you think's easier to attack? Someone who is like being hyper vigilant, looking out for flying debris, bracing against gusts of wind, or someone who's got their headphones on without a care in the world, like walking while they're thinking they're perfectly safe. I'd put more money on the person in ideal conditions being vulnerable than the person who is currently trying to deal with a whole bunch of stress around them. Like, no, I think this is a bad take, Sean. Completely a bad take. But let's wrap this one up, guys. We're almost done. 3 minutes to go.
The problem with that is I have a mid-size SUV, and I don't quite have enough money to buy another one at this point. So what I'd have to do is buy like a Toyota Corolla or something like that to hold me over until I can afford another mid-size SUV. But the problem with buying a Toyota Corolla is that if I get into another accident, if I got into the same exact accident,
why the fuck do you need a mid-size SUV? You are a yoga instructor. Why do you need an SUV? Hold on. I'm gonna look this up. I'm gonna look this up, guys. Hold on a second. How much the heck does... Now, admittedly, modern prices, so... Geez, what's it say? Like, build and price. Yeah, continue, whatever. 26 grand. Maybe I'll look up a 2019 price, but 18 to 24. Holy. You are a yoga instructor. Like, who does not have a family. You don't have any other passengers in the vehicle, really. Why the heck do you need a vehicle worth over $20,000? You can get a perfectly competent vehicle for $5 to $6 grand. Why do you need a vehicle that is 4 to 5 times the price? Oh, freaking 2.5 minutes.
With the Corolla, I would have been hospitalized, if not worse. Like, I was going like 35 miles an hour and just smashed right into my car. So if my car had been much smaller than his car, because he was driving a big truck, things could have been a lot worse. And so a part of it.
Oh, wait. So you need a big vehicle so that your vehicle doesn't get smashed up by a bigger vehicle? You know, I'm reminded of hearing about the first time seatbelts came out. Because apparently, I may be wrong on this, chat, but apparently, when seatbelts first came out, the number of casualties did not change. Now, the seatbelts worked. They did save the lives of the drivers inside. But because of the added security of the seatbelt, people drove more recklessly and ended up killing more pedestrians. So, perhaps getting a smaller, more vulnerable vehicle might get you to adopt more cautious driving habits because you're not relying on the mass of your vehicle to protect you against someone else smashing into you or you smashing into someone else. Yeah. Is that Grim Reaper really the thumbnail to that story? Yes. MTNXII. Yes. He really thought that a fender bender was the appropriate story to put a Grim Reaper as the thumbnail for. Seriously. And I'll be honest, I'm willing to bet that he didn't make this. This is probably someone else's artwork that he just took and, I don't know, he might have credited them in the comments. I'd have to double check the archive. But at the very least, when I have music or use images for my thumbnail, I own the rights to them. Or at the very least, they're copyright free because AI generated stuff is kind of nebulous that way. But let's wrap this up.
I like to exercise as I'm quite tall, and the safety of it, of having a bigger car, is certainly tantamount. So I could have made the impulse decision of doing that, or I could have stayed calm like I did. I let my friend, who's the auto mechanic, or he's not an auto mechanic, but he's good enough to be one, who's the auto mechanic, probably even better, because he not only does fix his cars, but he customizes cars too, so he's quite good. I let him know, I called him, he said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Just get the money from that. Go. Let them total your car. Get the money. Buy your car back. What do you have to do? Because you don't get when you have a car totaled, you don't get the full amount. It's like, we're going to give you $5,000, but you're going to have to pay the junkyard value. So you're going to have to buy it back from us. You're going to have to take the $1,500 junkyard value of it or whatever it is. So whatever. Get all that done. Talk to me on Saturday. Talk to me on Sunday. I'll get it fixed, or I'll fix enough for you to drive it so that you don't have to drive a rental car. And so as bad as things can go, they can always.
I mean, I guess U.S. side, you guys might consider more of that. Personally, like, if my vehicle was a write-off, I'm pretty sure that my insurance would go up. And quite frankly, the amount the insurance would go up would be far more than it was really worth to do all the repairs. So when I had my incident, I didn't even tell insurance. I was just like, okay, I'm going to go get this fixed. I'm going to pay for it out of pocket. And so far, total repair fees have been under $1,000, whereas the initial estimate was like 10 grand plus, worth more than the vehicle itself. So, yeah. You might think he made a good decision here. I honestly don't know whether that's the case or not. But y'all probably have far more experience with vehicle incidents and repairs than I do. So I'll leave that decision up to you. I don't have enough experience to say one way or the other.
Let's get worse. But of course, and they tend to happen all at the same time. But if you want to, if that's happening to you, if you're in a situation where you've had a ton of bad things happen to you, if you're in a very bad spot, just know that the best way to turn it around is to be calm and take things step by step. What's one thing I can do to make this shitty situation better? And if you figure that out, how about what's one more thing I can do to make this shitty situation better? And eventually, you can put yourself in a route of success, because once you succeed once, it's easy to succeed again and again and again and again, and you can flip your bad shit around. So I think I will leave it at that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button too. If this has happened to be a particularly powerful video for you, how about you share the video? That's probably the most helpful thing you can do if you want to help out the channel, is share my videos. I've gotten quite a few subscribers from people doing that in the past week or so, or 2 weeks or so. My channel's pretty new. You probably know this at this point if you're watching. So that's been super helpful, people sharing my videos. So please go ahead and do that, and I will see you, talk to you, or whatever in the next one.
Except you can't, because this is, again, one of his deleted videos. So if you want to make any comment on his video, you have to rely on either quoting this live stream or this particular segment. Which, now that I'm recording these, might actually be a little bit easier to post. But alright, we'll queue up the next video real quick. Last one of the stream. This one, in light of his more recent and controversial statements, I think this next one's going to be quite good. So even if we go over the 3-hour mark, we're just going to keep going. I'm going to grab another drink, guys, and let's have the AI serenade you with the completely unknown tunes of composition number 314. I'll be right back. I don't know. I ain't exactly a major connoisseur of trap, so I can't say whether that's good or bad. Not really doing it for me. I'll be honest there. Dragon Lord Peter, his avatar Bob was like a Flash cartoon. Getting up ready to text-to-speech device flashbacks. Hey, glad to know there's another fan of Bruva Alpha Boost's work here, because big fan of Emperor had a text-to-speech device. Still pissed at Games Workshop for messing with them. Yeah, it's mid. Yeah, Alchemist. I'd say that song was mid. But, again, randomly thrown together, so we'll see. But, yeah, if that's mid by trap standards, which I can agree with. I'd have to spend a fair bit of time with these kinds of songs to make them good. That's the main advantage of AI, is the iteration time. Like, you can generate a whole bunch of songs that are Maybe they're good. They're probably mid. They might even be bad. But like, if you gave me an hour to make as many songs as possible versus by hand versus with AI, the amount of songs I can make with AI is just significantly more. It just is what it is. So you just, I don't know. We'll see if any of these AI, because again, if even one of these songs turns out to be good enough to take to a more advanced stage, then I have actually come out ahead in terms of time with them. Because trying to create a decent song from scratch would probably take longer than it took to make all of these. Let's see, was a pleasant beat like a jazz club smoking cigars with buds. I don't know. The melodies just kind of bug me. Like, it's not bad, but I definitely cut out the melody personally and rework it. So we'll see. I intend to listen to a lot of these later on after the stream, mark any ones that I think have some potential, and then send them to Chronic for further review to see if he wants to do any raps over them. Because there's, like, I got some trap, some old school rap, trap R&B, and a couple other composition styles. But we'll see. We'll see. For now, though, let us jump back into the next video.
In economics, there's a
Ooh, we have a bell curve for the thumbnail, guys. So let's get into our last segment of the night. So, record. So we are currently looking into archived video 26 of Think Before You Sleep. Most women are below average. Yes, most women are below average. This, in light of his recent statements on the OkCupid study, this is beautifully ironic. And it's only 14 minutes. So let's get into this.
in economics, there's a theory called the Laffer curve, which is a tax versus work principle. And it says if you tax somebody too much, they will stop working. But if you tax someone too little, you won't produce enough revenue. This is kind of like the government gold mine between how much exactly should we be taxing people. Now, that number is hard to actually determine. It's just a theory you couldn't give. It's hard to give actual numbers for this because
I've spoken on this a couple times. I think TFM has too, and apparently it's about 15%. 15% is approximately the number. So, hard to determine, perhaps hard to determine it precisely, but it's around 15% from what I understand. Let's keep going.
because the number changes based off of how available economic resources are. Like before in the past, in 1776 or 1773, they had a 3% tea tax, and people shit their pants over it because things weren't as easy to get back then. We didn't have modern farming technology. We didn't have electricity.
Okay, but that was a 3% tea tax. That, it's not like that was the only tax, period. Admittedly, not exactly a scholar of U.S. history 1776. If anyone is more knowledgeable in that, please mention it in chat and I'll speak it out here. But let's keep going.
And gas and cars and stuff like that. So getting the essentials of life was a lot more difficult, whereas right now, the essentials of life are a lot easier, so people can handle a much higher tax burden than they used to be able to hold.
You know, easier? I don't know. Getting like the essentials in life, the standards have gotten way lower. Because, like, let's be honest, if the government said, hey, you can have this chunk of land, you can own this chunk of land, you just have to live on it and work it, I'm willing to bet a good chunk of people would take that. Nowadays, you're hard-pressed to find a full-time job that will actually pay the monthly rent in your local area. So, I think that's kind of a broad statement. Easier to get in some ways, perhaps, but I don't know if that's exactly universally correct. But let's keep going.
And so Laffer curve is basically just saying if we tax people too much, they will stop working, they'll stop playing the game. And I think this relates to MGTOW and red pill channels very well, because if you look at the scale of attractiveness on a universal principle, so we can take the Laffer curve and apply it to attractiveness, because
So it's a picture. Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I poop on company time. You know what? That's not wrong. Like if you get a 30-minute paid break, why should you use that time for your pooping? Now, admittedly, I take issue with the guys who use pooping time as an excuse to consume illicit substances, but that is a separate argument entirely, admittedly. Personal property doesn't exist when the government thinks your very being is property. Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong, and I don't entirely think the government's wrong for thinking it that way. Like, the government at any point largely has the power to remove you off of your property if they so desired. And well, there's all the infrastructure stuff. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily know a solution to this, but I can at least understand why people in government would not think of the average citizen as their equal.
guys work on an absolute scale. You can take a series of women and say, this one's a 1, this one's a 2, this one's a 3, this one's a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and those would always be the case. Now, that might not be representative of the population size, so maybe if more women could be on the 8 out of 10 range, whereas maybe some other time more women are on the 3 out of 10 range. So it's not a relative scale. Like when women are a relative scale where they want the most competitive male they can possibly get. So it's like if you're going to a martial arts tournament, the women are only going to want the man who wins first place, and every man who does not win first place is going to be seen as something.
This took a lot of effort. Not exactly flattering photos. I'd be curious to get the original source of this, because it'd be interesting to break down. Oh wow, some of those 3s are really scary. Jeez. Yeah, you know what? Heck, I'm sorry guys for staying on this. I think I'm gonna have to. Play this clip real quick. There we go. Wait, no, not that one. This one.
You need to have muscles on your eyeballs.
Yeah. Sorry, I like that one, but let's keep going here.
Par. So they work on a relative scale where there's always going to be one man at the top who gets everything, and while everybody else kind of gets the scraps. Whereas women are on an absolute scale. So it's, you get this unattractive, we'll stop participating. If you're this attractive, certainly we'll go towards you. And I mention this because over the past 50 years or so, the past couple decades, there has been a massive obesity crisis and it's a crisis for multiple reasons. It's kind of like if you get the right wrong thing, you can really collapse a lot of different programs. So certainly the obesity problem is a crisis because of health, because it prones you to more bone disease, it prones you to more joint disease, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and these are all major problems, and they're all the major killers of America. And you can look at how bad this problem gets. I'll throw a CDC study up on the screen right now, where they started studying this in the 1980s, the obesity trends. In the 1980s, of all the states they looked over, most of them were in the 10% range of obesity. Just 2 or 3 decades later, you can see that most of them are now in the 20% range.
I do appreciate that he's throwing up more studies and charts for this one. So, hey, this one's actually backed up by a whole bunch of data. So, useful.
So doubled in just a couple decades. And I think this is really the end game of feminism. I don't think this is easier access to food, because we've had easier access to food for longer than the obesity crisis. Longer than it would take for obesity to double. I think this is largely due to feminism and largely due to mom being at work, which means in single motherhood crisis, and now mom doesn't have time to cook, so she has to go for easy.
Oh, Conal McCracken. This one right here is apparently most women are below average. The irony is so thick you can cut it with a knife and put it between bread as a cream cheese filling and probably gain a shit ton of weight off of it. Oh, this is good.
Processed crap. So instead of having a nice home cooked meal, we're all going to eat high calorie McDonald's foods that are highly addictive and they, well,
Oh, no source with the graph equals trash. Oh, that's not actually his fault. Hold on. There is actually a source. It's just covered up by my layout here. So, here, let me actually adjust that real quick. It's a bit smaller, but yes, there is actually a source on these ones.
they're cheap and they want to make, they're designed in a way to want you to make you want to eat more and more, as opposed to mom's home cooked meal is not as addictive. It doesn't have as much sugar and oil and crap in it, so you can eat it but be a lot more satisfied at the portions that you have. Whereas it's a lot harder to do that with fast food and processed foods. And so this is a problem because, like I said, men work on an absolute scale. It could be the case that you have a 7 out of 10, but a 7 out of 10 doesn't necessarily describe the average woman. It describes the average attractive woman.
Here. Sorry, guys. Here's some nice Femghost tomboy abs, just to help with some of the images that you'd have to look at on the main video. Sorry about that. We will have to get back to it, though.
And so certainly, as it is today, if you become overweight, you can very, very easily lower your number. Like, I remember when I was taking my yoga training, I was around tons of women. Actually, besides one other guy, I was the only guy in the training, so it was a fairly good ratio. And I had seen one particular...
A fairly good ratio. He's the only guy in the group, basically. Yep, sounds about right. That doesn't help your case with our theory that you only took this yoga stuff to try and meet women. But that's a whole other discussion.
Person that training, which was about 7 years ago. And I saw her about 2 years ago. Now, 7 years ago, she was about an 8 out of 10. Easily. When I saw her 2 years ago, she had gained quite a bit of weight, and just from a little weight, she gained maybe about 40 or 50 pounds. Not a ridiculous amount. She's not like morbidly obese.
40 to 50 pounds. That's a lot. Hey, no, saying, oh, that's not that much. No, 40 to 50 pounds is a lot. Like, if someone weighs, say, like 150 pounds, that is an increase of 33%. 1/3 of their weight they have then added on. If they're like 160 pounds, that's a 25%. They added on a whole nother quarter of body mass. That is not insignificant. That's a lot.
Obese, but enough to lower her number to a 4. And so if you look at the obesity rates and the obesity numbers, 70% of people, and let's say this includes women, of course it includes men, but 70% of women are in the overweight to obese category, which means
quotable quotes, 70% of women are in the overweight to obese category. So if you're going to say that an obese woman is below average, then yes, the majority of women are below average, proving the title.
80% of women are at the 4 range.
Yeah, okay. Frost, I'm 215 pounds and it ain't fat, lol. Okay, yeah, but Frost, you are basically 50 pounds of muscle. You are not the average American. Like, you freaking bench and pull up shit that most people will never do in their lifespan. You can't exactly use yourself as a metric. But here's the thing, Frost. If you were to gain 40 to 50 pounds in the next 2 years and it wasn't pure muscle, you'd have to agree that that's a bit much. Because 40 pounds on 215, that's still like what? 20%, 50 to 20% increase in weight, another fifth of you shoved on top. If that wasn't pure muscle, which you'd probably only get with a bunch of like TRT injections, yeah, I'm willing to bet that you putting on 40 to 50 pounds probably wouldn't be healthy. But let's keep going.
So if you're the average guy, the odds are you're going to get a below average and attractive female, which is, well, you're going to get a 4 out of 10 as opposed to what you should be getting is a 7 out of 10 on the attractiveness scale. Whereas 100 years ago, this could be a lot more skewed to where the average one was thin, and so you could easily get a 7 out of 10 on the absolute scale of attractiveness. And this creates a big problem because it's not just the physical attractiveness that's the issue. If it was just the physical attractiveness, this wouldn't be that big of a deal. But the reason that we see thin as attractive, and you can, of course, there's some guys do like fat chicks. I guess that's okay, but for
Sorry, guys.
You
I'll
need
play
to have muscles on your eyeballs.
I apologize.
the vast majority of men like women who are thin. I mean, just look at porn for an example. Almost all porn is of thin women. Of course, there's fat porn, but it's a lot far and fewer in between than the porn of thin women. But like I said, the reason that we're attracted to that because
And that is despite porn advertisements trying to... Like, first porn advertisements are trying to push fatter and fatter women. Now they're actually trying to push trannies. Like, seriously, guys. Know your fucking audience here.
total weight you have relates to your actual health. And more importantly, it's one of the physical markers of mental health. And I mentioned before, I'm a big fan of Jean Piaget, who says that if you're going to have a mental idea, you have to physically act it out first, which means basically that's saying, in this case, actions speak a lot louder than words. So I can look at someone's actions and determine their mentality based on the practices they act out. And so if you act out the practice of obesity, that is a practice of self-destructiveness. That is, I don't like myself, so I'm not going to take care of myself. It could be super destructive. Like I mentioned before, I'm a big follower of...
Okay, guys, like, I'll be honest. I'm sorry. So until this goes away, I will spare you. I did not expect that image to last for that long. So here, have some relatively more attractive ghost tomboy while we get through this.
Boogie 298, not because of his YouTube channel, because of his gaming videos.
Okay, well, apparently he was just about to take it away, so... Yeah, now you get to see Boogie 298, which, admittedly, still more appealing than the land whale prior.
Because of his comedy videos, but I'm a follower of him because I want to watch him get healthier, because he's been getting quite a bit healthier over the past roughly 2 years or so since he got his gastric bypass surgery.
That seems weird to me, honestly. Like, I mean, I don't exactly have an abundance of time to watch other people's content. It's hard enough to keep up with warband content alone, let alone stuff beyond that. Getting invested in someone's stuff just because you want to watch their journey of getting healthier, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like, maybe if the content's interesting or insightful or it's covering a topic that I'm fascinated by, sure. But I don't watch a YouTuber because I want to watch their health and fitness journey. I'd much rather keep better track of my own. It's strange to me. Let's keep going.
Physically and mentally. And so for him, the reason he was overweight was because he didn't have the power to kill himself. He didn't have the testicular fortitude to hang himself or shoot himself in the face or take a bunch of pills. So what he said he was going to do is he's just going to eat himself to death. He's just going to slowly eat until he dies. And 1, he gets to eat, which is great. 2, he gets to die and he wants to die, so that's perfect. So you can hit the morbidly obese margin and be a person like that, or you can be a person who is overweight and just kind of like, well, I don't give a shit. And if you look at the trends, at least overall, based on the CDC, overweight is a massive growth. It doesn't just stay stagnant.
From Frost. Great. A lot of the guys watch these videos for motivation to help them get into shape. Okay, but that's the thing. If it works for them, it works for them. Having been a consistently skinny bastard my entire life, like, I have very much the opposite problem. Like, if I was able to gain 40 to 50 pounds in a year or two, I'd probably be able to be like, oh, good, now I have excess weight that I can actually turn into muscle mass. But I can't. It's hard enough for me to get enough calories to bulk as it is. Like, a weight like this... I don't know how to get that. I just don't. The amount of money I need to spend on food would be, quite frankly, hard to justify. But different lifestyles, different metabolism. I don't know. Let's keep going.
It goes and it goes up quite a bit. I wouldn't say exponentially, but it goes up quite significantly. And so obesity is a marker of emotional problems. It's a marker of I don't care about myself. It's a marker of, well, You can look at those studies on rats, where they put cocaine in in a rat cage, and the rat presses the button, it can get as much cocaine as it wants. And so if they put the rat in the bad environment, the abusive environment, or they isolate it, it'll just keep hitting that cocaine button until it dies.
Yeah, the Skinner box experiment, where, yeah, surprise, surprise, if you put a rat in a box with a button that laces their water with cocaine, they're just going to hit the cocaine button until they overdose. Whereas if you put them in an environment where they have a whole bunch of social interaction, a quote-unquote rat utopia, and then you put that in, then they only use it occasionally, and they'll engage with the other rats and the playground and all that other kind of stuff. So we'll probably explain that in a second.
But if they put it around a bunch of other rats, they put it in a good play environment, they put it in a good food environment, that rat will never go near that cocaine.
No, I wouldn't say never. It just does it on occasion.
And so you have to ask with things like that.
Oh, God. I'm sorry, guys.
You need to have muscles on your eyeballs.
I'm getting so much use out of that clip.
Is why is someone participating in self-destructive behavior? Why is someone a drug addict? Why is someone an alcoholic? Why is someone a food addict? And the answer most likely is because they have emotional problems. There's some type of problem that's getting in the way. Even when people like that try to lose weight, they can't. And the reason they can't is not genetics. The reason they can't is not because of the food they're eating. The reason they can't is because their lives are so self-destructive that something bad will happen, and it's so terrible that it...
Okay, guys. I do want to actually keep some viewer retention, so here's something to just tide you over for the next minute or two.
It disrupts them emotionally to where they start medicating with food. So I came home to a pissed off husband. He yelled at me, he hit me in the face. And so what I'm going to do to make up for that is when he's not here, I'm going to eat a bunch of Twinkies, I'm going to eat a whole chocolate cake, I'm going to eat a bunch of cheese and ice cream, and I'm just going to get fat. Because that's how I manage my emotions. And that's the same thing with, like, one of these signs of addiction for alcoholism or drugs is if you're managing your feelings with alcohol. It's a very, very common thing. So I think we've hit that point on the attractiveness Laffer curve where it's gotten so bad, women have gotten so unattractive, whether it's...
He switched images. So, this is the image. Back to the waifu.
Physically or mentally, or it's the divorce courts, that it's time to walk away. It's time. The only way we can fix this problem, because we don't have any power in relationships, we don't have any power in marriage. A woman could marry you thin and become fat, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And so the only way we're going to fix this problem is to start saying no, is to stop appeasing, because every time you appease, you get more of the...
Need more ghost babes? Make a slideshow? There are more. They're not exactly safe for YouTube, but, you know, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a slight variety of tasteful content, let's say, just to make some of these visuals a little more enjoyable.
The bad thing. Like, imagine you have a child, and that child screams, whines, cries, and hits until he gets chocolate. Well, that child's going to find out that if he screams, whines, and kicks, he's going to get more chocolate. So you are going to basically subsidize that behavior. I do this, and I get what I want, so I'm going to just keep doing that. You get the same thing with migrants, and people are trying to appease migrants with money. So they say, oh, great. So if we threaten to kill and rape and steal, well, you'll give us more money. So let's just keep doing that so we keep getting more money. It's, it makes a lot of evolutionary sense. And I'm always for taking small steps. Like, what's the simplest thing that we can do to solve this major political problem? Because, well, it's like this. When you do one thing bad, more things that are bad tend to happen in tandem.
Okay, we're actually to the point where apparently the last 3 minutes or so are just his titles, so... yeah, Ghost Babe's going to have to go away because we are reviewing his video technically.
With that one bad thing is unintended consequences. But oftentimes, the opposite's true, where you do one good thing, and more good things happen as unintended consequences just by, well, benefit of the good thing that you've done. So I think the simplest thing we can possibly do is just start saying no more often. If you do not meet my physical attractive standards, if you do not meet my mental health standards, then I'm not going to engage with you at all. And in this situation as men, we have all the power, because if you're going to negotiate, the one who can wait the longest, or the one who can say no the longest, is going to be the one who has all the buying power.
So, apparently Brittany Venti, I mean, meets Sean's physical standards? Okay. I mean, like, as Chronic will agree, she's got nice tatas. Whether or not she'd meet the mental standards, personally, not for me, but maybe Sean has lower standards than I do. Let's continue.
Because on the sexual market value scale, women have about 15 years of fertility. They have about their 20 to 35 where they have the highest amount of successful childbirth and the highest amount of physical attractiveness before things start really going downhill. Whereas men have about a 30-year window. We have about till 2250 before our attractiveness starts plummeting. And, well, men can certainly have children up until their 70s or so, whereas women cannot. They can't have children typically past 45 or 50 or so when they hit menopause. So we can play the long game. And certainly this might skip a generation. It might skip the millennial generation, for the better in this case. Because what could happen is that maybe the people who want the MGTOW people, the right people who want to have children don't get them. But maybe what we could do is give the gift of the next generation being able to do what we want to do. Either we do one of two things. We start walking away from the table and things get repaired. We end universal suffrage. We get rid of welfare. We get rid of family courts. We put things back to the way they were before feminism, which is honestly at this point I think it's the more unlikely option. Or we give the next generation and maybe our generation the ability to have artificial birth and the ability to have artificial relationships that are on par with actual existing traditional relationships. And I think a lot more people than the mainstream would like to admit would be perfectly fine with having an artificial relationship. I mean, just look at
Artificial relationship? Yeah, I'd read that as, chatbots, which, let's be honest, Replica would probably be a lot more prominent if it didn't get hijacked by the woke. The problem is every time a decent artificial relationship comes out, some sort of woke institution or organization comes along and absolutely destroys it. Like, were it not for all this shaming and co-opting by woke SJWs, we'd already have decent, quote-unquote, artificial relationships. And if we're being completely honest, women are often pretending to be the way they are in what we'd call real relationships. So what actually is an artificial relationship, really?
the waifu culture in Japan, where people are perfectly willing to date their Nintendo DS as a girlfriend. I think this is actually going to transition quite well, and I think if this does go quite well, we can very well save our society. But honestly, I like to play both.
Society is not going to be saved. You are not going to save society. You can save yourself. You cannot save society. Society is going to have to burn to the ground before people will suffer enough to actually make the necessary changes. Focus on saving yourself, gentlemen. Do not trust in society being saved.
Strategies at the same time. I like to play the red pill strategy, walk away, and let's see if we can get things changed. Or if that doesn't happen, then the next thing to do at the same time, we're working on both these at the same time, the thing to do would be to go the artificial route. We wouldn't want to have all of our eggs in one basket. If there's a third route, someone please think of a third route. I would be perfectly fine with that as long as it's viable. And
the main thing is, third route, it's called going overseas. Go overseas, find a country where feminism is not going to get to a terminal level of bad for 20 years, and have kids there. You're not going to save the current you're not going to save current society, but if you want kids badly enough, then you need to build your life and your career to go overseas, find a country where feminism has not infected it as much as it has in the West. Make sure that you've got a timeline of at least 20 years, ideally 30 years, so that you can meet a woman, have kids, raise a family to adulthood there, before feminism gets to the point where you're absolutely screwed, and work with that. But no, Western society, the society of North America, of most of Europe, it's absolutely screwed. There is no saving it. Artificial wombs, let's be honest, China's probably the first ones that are going to be able to come out with that because they have fewer restrictions on ethics. And if they could, they would absolutely be using it right now. And even then, it's still going to take 20 years for them to get people that are capable of, actually being soldiers or whatnot. So even if the artificial womb was invented today, it wouldn't be distributed far or wide enough to save things from the current trajectory. We got maybe 10, 15 years left at the most, so no. If you're aiming to have kids for yourself, go overseas. If you're okay with not having kids or having a family, then just focus on your own survival and don't worry about any of this. But this idea of trying to save society, it is too late. We have passed the point of no return. So if someone could provide a convincing argument to the otherwise, I'd be open to it. But my conclusion after years of looking into this is no. There's no saving society. There's only saving yourself. Let's wrap this up.
I will call that a video. So if you like this video, please hit the like button and the subscribe button if you haven't done that already. Please share the video if you thought it was particularly good. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks again.
Except that you won't, because this, again, is one of the videos that Sean of Think Before You Sleep has deleted from his archive. So if you're going to like, share, subscribe, or just comment on it because you think something either I said or something that he said is absolute bullshit, you're going to have to look below this video or live stream. All right. Yeah, I got to remember to record these segments more. That actually works. We've still got another 18 minutes. That last one was only 14 minutes. So I'm going to put the waifu back up, put away Think Before You Sleep, cue up the song Composition 213. I'm going to listen to that for a bit while I grab another drink. And then we'll just do a bit of chill stream talk for the next couple minutes. So if you have any questions, comments, put them in chat. I'll respond to anything that I think's interesting. And we'll wrap up at about the 3-hour mark. So see you in a few. That one I think has potential. I'm going to mark that one down. All right, so the can I archive the Pearly Things Nick Fuentes video? Is it still up? Because I'm not the one who runs the MGTOW Mirror archive. But if it's still up, maybe I can archive it by myself. see. We've got the trailer. Addresses the interview. I do not see it. If someone can send me a link to the video on Discord, I may be able to get it. But I don't see it. If it's already been deleted, then unless it was archived by the MGTOW Mirror project, I don't have any way to access it. So, apologies. Yeah, Frost. Yeah, check out Frost's backup channel and just get ready for his channels to be deleted. Frost does not hold back, so he tends to go through channels pretty bloody fast. Gray over here about to make some purple-based babies. Well, the thing is, I found that making a purple skin, highly biased. OnlyFans does not allow for it. So I'm going to have to get the waifu to bleach her skin to a more human-like state and perhaps render her a little less anime. So there may be some more realistic gray waifu images coming out in the future. I have the technology. It's just a matter of putting the time in to generate them. I see. I should go back to Sir Yeetus's latest video. Well, I normally stream with the guy all the bloody time. What the heck's his latest one? Oh. Oh, you know, reactions are one thing. I don't know if my reaction would be that good, but I will instead post Edis's video right here. So yeah, go check that out. Like, I'll be honest, if it wasn't for Sir Yeetus, I probably wouldn't be in the warband to begin with. He really gave me my starting platform to get out and speak about this. So if I didn't get to join in and like get to speak on so many of his streams, I probably wouldn't be able to like be where I am today. So whether or not he's in the warband, I'm still gonna promote his content. All right, so oh geez, yeah, Frost flexing on his freaking massive gains. Like, dude, yeah, I gotta get in on that. I gotta manage my time a bit better to get some more workout stuff in. Let's see. So, I can't help it if I got no filter. No, Frost, like, hey, as long as you're willing to put up with it, you do you, but I would at the very least suggest that you download your videos and archive them somewhere or like ask me to archive them, because like you're going to lose a lot of content because YouTube's going to keep wiping them. At the very least, you should make like an Odyssey or Rumble account so that you can upload your YouTube channel stuff there, where YouTube itself isn't going to nuke it all the time. Do I have to force you honey buns and peanut butter? You might, honestly. I try to put away some of the calories, but I just don't spend a lot of time eating throughout the day. Carrot cake muffins are the bomb. Yeah, muffins, they're okay. Like, I'm trying to get a decent amount of protein in the diet, but at this point, I'd settle for whatever the heck can give me enough calories. Yeah, caloric dense calories, yeah, like chicken, red meat, pasta. I try to get it, but considering that my work demands well over 3,000 calories every day, it's hard to put that away. Boston cream, apple fritter, crispy chicken wrap. Hey, if I was within easy access of Tim Hortons, then I'd probably go for it. But that stuff ain't easy to shove into your face every single day, and it ain't cheap. Sneeko meets Charlie video by Meat Canyon. Well, you know, as an animator, I could probably provide some decent commentary on Meat Canyon stuff. So maybe the next cult meeting. I am trying to get to some of the more advanced think before you sleep stuff, and it looks like I might only be able to do one of these cult meetings per week. I'll try to schedule it in. I'll see if I can. But at the very least, I want to dedicate at least one video per week to getting through Think Before You Sleep. Because, hey, I got like, 37, 39 viewers right now? Like, this stuff, it does quite well. Too bad you guys don't have the same eating habits like we do. We eat like kaijus. I still wonder to this day how some people put away that many calories. Like, I don't know whether it's metabolism or eating habits or what, but I just can't put enough calories on a day-to-day basis. Roast the rat. That's the thing. Like, I kind of follow where the views go, and roasting Think Before You Sleep seems to get more views than my other live streams, so I'm going to keep doing it. Imagine a Monster Hunter style plate. That's how much we eat here. Oh god. That is not a plate. That is a table. A table worth of food. Oh god, eat 3,000 calories in one meal? Yeah, jeez. I'm going to have to, like, force myself to eat until I'm absolutely stuffed every single meal just to start to get used to it. I'd rather drink a lot of water. I hear if you drink a ton of water, then you can actually help expand your stomach a bit. How many slices of pizza do I normally eat? I can eat, like, a large pizza in one sitting. Well, okay, not a large. Like, I can eat, like, a medium. I can eat a medium pizza in one sitting if I'm hungry. Like, that's probably about the biggest I could eat in one go. And I gotta eat it fast, too. There's no taking that slow. Take a toke? I mean, I know that's a good appetite stimulant, but that a weed narcotic is just a whole other matter. 2 giant pizzas in 30 minutes. Jeez. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Clearly, I can't even put away half of what you can, so... I'd say it sounds like a skill issue on my part. Alright, so... But yeah, we got... gallon of milk in a minute, despite being allergic. Jeez. Eat before you sleep, you know, might not be bad advice. But I think we're good to wrap it up here, guys. We got through 3 of those videos in under 3 hours, somehow. So I'm going to play the outro music right now. Thank y'all for attending the Red Pill Cult meeting. And at the very least, we're going to have the Tuesday Tech Talk. Maybe I'll be able to get something in for Monday. And we've got tomorrow's Elden Ring stream for those of you who want to see me keep fighting my way through Volcano Manor. So, y'all have a good night. Peace out, Warband. I'll see you tomorrow.
Feminism.